The mansion now sparkles so brilliantly that visitors can hardly believe it is truly Luciana's estate. They remember that the last time they visited, it had resembled nothing more than a haunted house. Luciana warmly welcomes everyone as they arrive, expressing her gratitude for their visit and happily greeting Beatrice and Miliaria. The villa in the royal capital belonging to Count Rudelberg has long been commonly known as the haunted house. Although the family holds a respectable noble rank, they lose most of their fortune because of the failures of the previous head of the household. As a result, no one understands how they could possibly afford to renovate and furnish a mansion that is not even their primary residence. Only a few weeks earlier, the estate had been surrounded by rusted gates, cracked stone walls, and neglected trees whose shadows cast an eerie atmosphere over the property. Every corner of the mansion had lived up to its infamous reputation as a ghostly residence. However, everything changes within the span of just 3 weeks. Luciana happily welcomes her friends into her home, sincerely thanking them for accepting her invitation. She says that their presence brings her great happiness before calling for her maid, Melody. She instructs Melody to prepare tea for the guests and announces that they will continue their gathering on the terrace. Her friends are left completely bewildered. They cannot understand why they are heading toward the terrace because they remember it as an unimpressive and poorly maintained place. To their amazement, the terrace is now overflowing with elegant flowers and beautiful decoration. The garden resembles something from a fairy tale, and they cannot help admiring how lovely it has become. It even appears much larger and more spacious than they remember. Luciana leads everyone toward the terrace, reminding them that they still have tea to enjoy together. The moment her guests take their first sip, they are immediately captivated by the mellow and delightful aroma. The gentle fragrance of spring flowers surrounds them, while the tea itself possesses a refreshing flavor that glides smoothly down the throat. Its rich yet mellow taste lacks even the slightest hint of bitterness or astringency, making it remarkably enjoyable. The guests become curious and wonder whether it is truly acceptable for Luciana to serve such high-quality tea leaves. Luciana calmly explains that they need not worry because this is the tea that is served regularly in her household. Her answer only leaves them even more astonished, as they find it impossible to believe that such an ordinary tea could produce such an extraordinary flavor. Luciana explains that preparing tea properly is far more important than the quality of the tea leaves themselves. She then turns toward Melody for confirmation, and Melody politely agrees with her statement. The guests also begin noticing that it is not only the tea that has changed. Even Melody herself seems far more refined than before. They cannot contain their curiosity any longer and point out that in only a few short weeks, absolutely everything has transformed. They desperately wish for Luciana to provide a proper explanation for the astonishing changes. Luciana simply laughs and admits that she intends to keep at least that much as her own little secret. Her playful response leaves her friends feeling that she is being unfair. They also observe that Luciana's manner of speaking has changed considerably. Her elegant speech no longer sounds like the Luciana they have always known. Luciana then asks whether her etiquette has been impressive and whether she has succeeded in astonishing them. She reveals that she has been practicing extremely hard in order to perfect her manners. Her friends readily admit that they are indeed impressed. However, despite her polished behavior, they confess that they still prefer the cheerful and natural Luciana they have always known. Luciana smiles and explains that she intends to save her refined Lady Luciana persona for the upcoming spring ball. Since the spring ball takes place immediately after the commencement ceremony, she realizes that the special occasion is approaching very quickly. The conversation naturally shifts toward the spring ball, and the friends continue discussing the event until it is finally time for them to depart. They leave the estate in their carriage, still amazed by everything they have witnessed. After the guests have departed, Melody reminds Luciana that she should have her hair prepared before dinner. Overwhelmed with happiness, Luciana suddenly embraces Melody and sincerely thanks her for everything she has done that day. Melody gently reminds her that it is inappropriate for a noble lady to cling so affectionately to her maid. Luciana cheerfully insists that she simply cannot help herself because the gathering has been such a tremendous success. She believes that everything turned out so well only because of Melody's support and guidance. Melody responds with quiet resignation, telling Luciana that it is enough and once again asking her to stop clinging to her. Luciana innocently questions whether such behavior is really so wrong, making Melody wonder where Luciana has learned such unusual ways of speaking. Melody ultimately concludes that they will have to begin etiquette lessons all over again from the very beginning. Luciana immediately steps back in embarrassment, sincerely apologizing to Melody and asking for her forgiveness. She assures her that there is no need to worry because whenever she is in a formal setting, she will conduct herself exactly as she has been taught. Melody responds with a hint of skepticism, wondering whether that is truly the case. Deciding not to dwell on the matter any longer, she states that the priority for now is to arrange Luciana's hair. As they continue preparing, Luciana admits that she has always been curious about one thing. She wonders why Melody chose to work at their estate in the first place. Considering Melody's outstanding reputation and popularity, Luciana cannot understand why she did not choose employment at a far more prestigious household. Melody explains that this estate is unique because she is the only servant employed there, allowing every responsibility to belong entirely to her. In the royal castle, the duties of maids are divided among many individuals, with each servant assigned only a specific task. However, at this estate, every aspect of maid service falls under her responsibility. To Melody, there is no greater dream than being able to perform every duty herself. She genuinely loves carrying out every task expected of a maid and believes that no position could possibly suit her better. As a maid, she is free to become an all-purpose servant responsible for every household duty, and she considers that role to be the ultimate fulfillment of her passion. Deep within her heart, Melody reminds herself that she has been reborn for a reason. She vows that she will one day prove herself to be the greatest maid in the entire world. In her thoughts, she addresses her mother, asking her to watch over her journey. This is not the story of a fallen noblewoman reclaiming her status. Instead, it is the story of a devoted maid who faithfully stands beside her beloved mistress. Her memories drift back to her previous life. At that time, the world appears entirely black and white in her eyes. As Reina Mizunami, she believes the world to be simple and easily understood. From an early age, she is recognized as exceptionally intelligent for a 6-year-old child. Her remarkable talent earns praise from everyone around her, and it seems as though the world has already prepared a place for such an extraordinary genius. However, like a frog living inside a well, she knows nothing of the vast ocean beyond her limited perspective. She has no understanding of the world's true breadth or depth. Everything changes when she unexpectedly encounters someone who transforms her life. One day, a maid arrives at her home and politely thanks the family for welcoming her. Reina gazes at the newcomer with innocent admiration before asking her parents who the beautiful person is. Her mother explains that the beautiful woman is their family's new maid. She further tells Reina that her studies have become overly focused on academics, and then explains that the maid has been brought all the way from England through the support of sponsors. She serves as their parlor maid. Reina simply stares at the elegant maid, thinking only that she is incredibly beautiful. At that moment, she has little else to say, but the encounter leaves a lasting impression on her. That very day, she begins searching the internet for information about maids. She learns that a maid is a female domestic servant and discovers that such occupations were especially prominent during the latter half of the 19th century. She eagerly studies the various positions, including kitchen maids, housemaids, and parlor maids, discovering that each role carries a different set of responsibilities. The following day, she appears dressed in a maid's uniform herself. Her parents cannot help admiring how adorable she looks. They quietly observe that she seems to be genuinely enjoying herself lately, something they have not seen for quite some time. In truth, she had rarely appeared happy before then, but now the colors that had once disappeared from her life gradually begin returning. She immerses herself completely in stories and films, often realizing that although princesses receive most of the attention, it is always the maids who quietly support them behind the scenes. Before long, she develops an overwhelming fascination with maids and eventually becomes completely obsessed with them. Using her extraordinary intelligence and exceptional ability to learn, she dedicates herself to mastering every piece of knowledge and every skill related to the profession. She studies every discipline required of a maid with absolute devotion. One day, she proudly announces to her parents that she intends to study in England so that she can become a professional maid. Her parents react with cheerful encouragement. They casually remark that they have heard Big Ben is a famous tourist attraction and tell her to enjoy herself since she loves maids so much. They simply hope she has a wonderful experience. However, fate takes an unexpected turn when the airplane carrying her is destroyed in a catastrophic explosion. The memories abruptly come to an end as another familiar scene unfolds. Someone once again asks her mother who the beautiful person standing nearby is. Her mother once more explains that the beautiful woman is the maid. The instant she lays eyes upon the maid, every memory from her previous life rushes back into her mind. She suddenly remembers the airplane and realizes that everything she experienced truly happened. Her mother notices her unusual expression and gently asks Celeste what is wrong. Composing herself, she calmly replies that nothing is the matter. Satisfied with the answer, her mother tells her that it is time for them to return home. Celeste, now living under her new name in this world, quietly informs her mother that the laundry has already been finished. Celeste's mother notices that her daughter has been in an unusually good mood lately. It almost seems as though she has been reborn into another world. In truth, Celeste does find herself living in a small town located in the frontier territory of the Kingdom of Theolas, a place called Reincarnated. It is a land she has never heard of during her previous life on Earth. However, there is one thing that makes this world completely different from her old one. Magic truly exists here. Her mother approaches her and wonders whether something good has happened that day. Celeste happily admits that something wonderful has indeed happened, but she decides to keep it a secret for now. She believes the right time to reveal everything will eventually come. As the days pass, Celeste learns that the profession of being a maid is highly respected and flourishing throughout this world. The realization fills her with determination. This time, she promises herself that she will become a real maid. Since people in this world officially come of age at 15, she secretly decides to spend every day training until then. When the time finally arrives, she wants to surprise her mother by revealing just how much she has accomplished. She imagines it as the perfect reverse surprise. Unfortunately, fate has different plans. Before Celeste can fulfill that dream, her mother falls seriously ill. Despite every hope, her condition continues to worsen until she eventually passes away. During her final moments, she apologizes to Celeste for leaving her behind and tells her that she has prepared a letter for her. After giving her beloved mother a proper burial, Celeste quietly opens the letter and begins reading it. The letter is addressed lovingly to her dear Celeste. Her mother asks for forgiveness because she has to leave her so soon. She writes that she had always wished they could have remained together until Celeste reached adulthood. More than anything, she wanted to personally congratulate her daughter on becoming a maid. The letter continues by explaining that Celeste will probably be surprised to learn that her secret was never truly hidden. Her mother has known about her dream all along. She expresses complete confidence that Celeste will one day become a truly wonderful maid. She then reveals a secret of her own. Long ago, she herself had once worked as a maid. She also explains that Celeste's father was originally the heir to a count's family and has most likely inherited the noble title by now. Her mother gently presents Celeste with two possible paths for her future. The first option is to seek out her father and live as the daughter of a count. The second option is to continue pursuing her lifelong dream of becoming a maid. She assures Celeste that she will respect whichever decision she chooses. However, if Celeste truly wishes to become a maid, then she hopes she will strive to become the greatest maid in the entire world. The letter ends with the heartfelt words that she loves her dearly. As Celeste finishes reading the letter, tears stream down her face. Holding the precious letter close to her heart, she makes a solemn promise to her late mother. Becoming a maid has always been her greatest dream, and she will never abandon it. She swears that she will fulfill her mother's wish and become the greatest maid the world has ever known. Her heartfelt determination forms a powerful vow, one made not only for herself but also for the memory of her beloved mother. Everything seems perfectly in place, and it almost feels as though her promise itself is blessed by a holy light. Determined to understand the magic of this world, Celeste attempts to cast a simple light spell by illuminating a candle with a gentle glow. However, instead of producing a tiny light, the candle suddenly shines with such overwhelming brilliance that it blinds the entire surrounding area. Startled by the unexpected result, Celeste wonders if this incredible phenomenon is truly her own magical power. She can clearly sense an enormous amount of magic flowing within her, but she cannot fully comprehend it. She remembers that even her mother could only cast a small light spell once each day. Compared to that, her own power is on an entirely different level. Realizing how dangerous such overwhelming magical energy could become if left uncontrolled, Celeste decides that it would be safer to avoid using it recklessly. She thinks it would be best to keep such dangerous power sealed away. However, only a short while later, her curiosity begins to overcome her caution. She decides that trying just a little more magic could not possibly hurt. What Celeste fails to realize is that her magical capacity far surpasses that of even the royal family. If her ability were described in only a few words, it would be said that her mastery of magic is so extraordinary that anyone witnessing it would either faint from shock or become consumed by envy. Her talent is simply beyond ordinary comprehension. A true genius remains a genius no matter where they happen to be. Meanwhile, Celeste herself remains blissfully unaware of just how exceptional she truly is. She is simply amazed by how incredible magic feels. She cannot believe how effortlessly every spell comes to her. To her, using magic seems completely natural, even though such ease is impossible for ordinary people. In reality, the magical power she possesses is so overwhelmingly vast that conquering the entire world would not be difficult if she ever desired such a thing. With her abilities alone, she could easily place the whole world beneath her control. Yet such ambitions never cross her mind. Instead, she smiles to herself and decides that this magnificent power has only one purpose. She will use every bit of it to become the world's greatest maid. To her, that is the most wonderful dream imaginable. Depending on the circumstances, someone with her power could easily change the fate of the entire world. Fortunately, there is often only a thin line separating a fool from a genius, and perhaps it is best not to think too deeply about that distinction. Completely filled with excitement, Celeste eagerly begins planning the creation of her own unique maid magic. The thought of developing magical techniques specifically for a maid makes her believe that she will have countless busy days ahead. Thus, the legend of an unparalleled maid begins, and the birth of a peerless maid is quietly set into motion. Before beginning her journey, Celeste decides that she should completely change her appearance. She plans to make her hair black instead of its naturally striking silver color. Using her remarkable magical abilities, she manipulates light itself until her silver hair appears as deep black. Having already resolved to become a maid, she leaves her hometown behind and sets off toward her future. As part of her disguise, she changes not only the color of her hair but also the color of her eyes. She remembers the contents of her mother's letter. Her mother had written that, if necessary, she could seek refuge with Count Cloud. Since he was her father, he would most likely accept her out of family obligation if he ever learned the truth about her identity. However, Celeste immediately dismisses that path. She knows that if she becomes the daughter of a count, she can forget about ever fulfilling her lifelong dream of becoming a maid. Noble responsibilities would undoubtedly replace the simple life she desires. She also believes that Count Cloud is probably no longer searching for her mother after all these years. Nevertheless, she decides that it is wiser not to take any unnecessary risks. The magic she uses is not ordinary hair dye. Instead, she manipulates the refraction of light itself, allowing both her hair and eye colors to appear completely different without causing the slightest damage. It is an incredibly advanced magical technique that demands calculations and magical control far beyond the abilities of ordinary mages. Only a true genius could perform such an extraordinary spell instinctively without even realizing how exceptional it truly is. Satisfied with her disguise, Celeste cheerfully prepares for her adventure. Filled with excitement, she eagerly sets out for the fashionable city of Trendy Wales aboard a horse-drawn carriage. Meanwhile, elsewhere, another story quietly unfolds. Two knights named Sable and Lecter arrive at a small rural town. They politely apologize to the town's mayor for their sudden and unexpected visit. The mayor welcomes them but cannot hide his curiosity. He wonders why knights serving the House of Count have traveled all the way to such a small and insignificant town. One of the knights explains that the matter is highly confidential. Acting under the direct orders of His Excellency the Count, they are searching for a particular woman. They present the mayor with a portrait. The moment he sees the picture, the mayor immediately recognizes the woman as Serena. The knights are overwhelmed with excitement. At long last, they believe they have finally located the woman they have spent so much time searching for. They eagerly imagine returning to the Count with joyful news. However, their excitement quickly fades when they notice the sorrowful expression on the mayor's face. Concerned, they ask him what is wrong. With great sadness, the mayor explains that Serena passed away approximately 6 months earlier. A terrible illness spread throughout the town, and she became one of its victims. The heartbreaking news leaves both knights speechless. Their expressions immediately fill with grief. After a moment of silence, the mayor cautiously asks why the Count has been searching for Serena after all this time. The knights request that the information remain strictly confidential before revealing the truth. Long before inheriting the title of Count, His Excellency and Serena had been deeply in love. Unfortunately, because of the enormous difference in their social status, the former Count forcefully separated them. Only 5 weeks earlier, the former Count had died, allowing His Excellency to inherit the noble title. The very first thing he did after becoming Count was order an extensive search to find Serena. Hearing this explanation, the mayor quietly realizes something important. He mentions the name Celeste. The unexpected name immediately catches the knights' attention, and they ask who Celeste is. The mayor explains that Celeste is Serena's daughter. The revelation shocks the knights. They quickly ask whether Serena had ever married another man. The mayor firmly replies that she never married anyone. The answer makes everything perfectly clear. If Serena never married, then Celeste can only be the count's daughter. Realizing the importance of this discovery, the knights immediately begin asking for more details. They inquire about Celeste's age, her appearance, and what kind of person she is. The mayor explains that Celeste is 15 years old this year. She inherited her mother's beautiful azure blue eyes and is a lovely young girl with extraordinarily rare silver hair. The moment the words silver hair are spoken, both knights are completely astonished. Such a distinctive feature would make her extremely easy to identify. Meanwhile, in the bustling city of Trendy Wales, the knights continue expanding their search. They question their subordinates about whether they have discovered any clues. The subordinates report that someone with silver hair would naturally attract attention wherever she goes. However, they believe she is probably no longer in the city. According to the information they have gathered, a young girl matching her description had been traveling alone after mourning the loss of her mother. A regular horse-drawn carriage heading west toward the neighboring country departed 2 days earlier. The mayor had also suggested that she most likely intended to travel to Trendy Wales. The knight immediately recognizes the girl's silver hair as identical to the count's and becomes certain of her identity. Without wasting another moment, he decides to continue into the neighboring country to pursue the young lady. Before departing, he entrusts Lecter with the responsibility of returning to the mansion and delivering a full report to the count. As Sable watches him leave, he reflects that he never expected the situation to develop this way and realizes that the report must reach the count as quickly as possible. Although Lecter hesitates to deliver the news because of Lady Serena's previous incident, his thoughts are interrupted when he notices a young woman walking unsteadily nearby. Wondering if she has become lost, he approaches her to see if she requires assistance. The woman explains that she has been unable to locate the carriage station because she is traveling to the capital. Lecter kindly points her in the correct direction, and she gratefully thanks him for helping her. As the woman departs, Lecter thinks that although she is traveling alone, the kingdom's carriage service is reliable enough to ensure her safety. Nevertheless, his own priority is to return to the mansion without delay. He understands that it is extremely urgent for him to reach the capital and report everything to the count. Meanwhile, during the carriage journey, Celeste learns from a fellow passenger that the scheduled carriage route was originally proposed by the Crown Prince 7 years earlier. The man explains that although the project began 7 years ago, it only started attracting widespread attention and became truly popular about a year ago. Celeste recalls that the Crown Prince is the same age as she is. The man further remarks that the prince was only 6 years old when he first introduced the idea, leaving Celeste amazed that someone so young could possess such remarkable foresight. After listening to the fascinating story, Celeste thanks the man, Max, for sharing such interesting information. Max admits that he has thoroughly enjoyed their conversation and is pleased that she happened to be seated beside him throughout the journey. Celeste then introduces herself under the name Melody Wade. She reflects that she deliberately avoided telling the people in her hometown where she was truly headed or what she intended to do. She even changes her name because she fears that revealing her real identity would allow others to discover her whereabouts. As the journey continues, Max comments on the remarkable skill of the coachman. Melody asks what he means, and Max explains that despite the roads in the region being poorly maintained, the carriage barely shakes at all. He wonders what kind of extraordinary technique or skill the coachman could possibly possess. Hearing this, Melody silently realizes that she should cast her own magic. Without drawing attention to herself, she quietly uses the spell Smooth Ground on the carriage's path. When Max thinks he hears her mutter something, Melody calmly dismisses the matter and simply advises him to be careful of motion sickness. Eventually, the carriage safely arrives in the royal capital. The passengers praise the coachman for his exceptional driving skills, expressing their admiration for the smooth journey. Before they part ways, Max remembers that Melody hopes to become a maid. He informs her that she can visit the Common Employment Guild, where middle-class servants without personal references are matched with suitable employers. Melody sincerely thanks him for the valuable advice and decides that she will head there immediately. Max remarks that the trip has been thoroughly enjoyable, while Melody responds that she also found it to be a pleasure and hopes they will meet again someday. Max admits that he would gladly hire her to work at his own residence, but he knows that his father would never permit such an arrangement. At that moment, another man approaches from behind and apologizes to Max for making him wait. Max immediately turns his attention to him and explains that they should depart at once because he must report the current condition of the West District Highway maintenance to the Grand Prince. Before leaving, the butler informs Max that his master wishes to speak with him regarding his companion for the upcoming spring ball. Max immediately dismisses the matter, explaining that he has no intention of escorting anyone. He believes there is no need to choose a partner unless he eventually meets someone he genuinely likes. The scene then shifts to Melody as she studies the notice board inside the Commerce Guild. The Commerce Guild serves as a government-managed vocational support organization. Originally, it only provided information and loans to guild members who paid an annual membership fee. However, about 6 years earlier, the guild expanded its services to include assistance for non-members as well. The job placement service Melody intends to use is one part of that newly established support system. As she reflects on the guild's history, she remembers that the entire idea was proposed by His Royal Highness the Grand Prince. She cannot help but admire him, thinking that he truly is an extraordinary person. Her thoughts soon drift toward her dream profession. She does not mind washing clothes or cleaning at all, but what excites her most is preparing delicious cuisine. She also wants to take proper care of her appearance because she hopes to welcome and serve distinguished visitors. If she works at a suitable residence, she imagines creating a beautiful pavilion in the garden where guests can enjoy elegant tea parties. Beyond that, she dreams of developing cosmetics and even designing stylish furniture. Her imagination paints an overly glamorous picture of the maid profession, reflecting the enthusiastic fantasies of a true maid enthusiast. While she is lost in her daydreams, she notices someone posting new job listings. Her attention immediately turns toward the board, hoping that a promising opportunity has finally appeared. Most of the available positions are intended for men, while the remaining advertisements are for women. One particular listing immediately catches her eye because it is recruiting a family housemaid. Normally, noble households require applicants to provide a letter of introduction, yet this position does not ask for one. Furthermore, every duty listed falls under ordinary household responsibilities. Melody concludes that the position must truly be for a housemaid. As the title suggests, a housemaid is responsible for cooking, laundry, cleaning, receiving visitors, and every other miscellaneous household task. Such servants are generally employed by lower-class families that cannot afford to hire multiple maids. Although it is considered the lowest-ranking position among maids, it is also the most demanding because one person is expected to handle every responsibility alone. Even with that understanding, Melody realizes that it would be nearly impossible for a single maid to manage a residence as enormous as a noble estate. Yet the employer listed is none other than the Count Rudelberg family. To anyone else, the advertisement appears to be a complete minefield filled with hidden dangers. However, Melody feels the exact opposite. Rather than seeing a warning, she sees the perfect opportunity. In her eyes, this is the job she has always dreamed of obtaining. Without hesitating, she rushes to the receptionist and eagerly announces that she wishes to apply for the position. The receptionist notices that the listing does not require a letter of introduction and confirms that her application is perfectly acceptable. Before the receptionist can say anything further, Melody has already hurried away with incredible enthusiasm. Watching her leave, the receptionist quietly reflects that she is certainly a highly motivated young woman. At the same time, she sincerely hopes that the housemaid currently working at the Rudelberg residence is a kind person. Suddenly, the receptionist, Saria, begins trembling. Another employee notices her unusual reaction and asks whether something is wrong. Saria explains that the applicant has just accepted the job listing for the Count Rudelberg household. The other employee casually remarks that the elderly maid serving there recently developed severe back problems and could no longer continue working. Because of that, the Rudelberg family must be in desperate need of a replacement if they have lowered their standards enough to remove the requirement for a letter of introduction. Even so, under such difficult working conditions, finding anyone willing to accept the position should be nearly impossible. Saria anxiously points out that someone has already accepted it. She insists that the position is far too demanding for a newly hired maid. The scene then shifts once more as Melody arrives before the enormous Rudelberg estate. Standing in front of the vast, eerie mansion, she cannot help but feel as though she is facing a haunted house. Melody stands before the enormous estate, gazing at the mansion that resembles a haunted house. Instead of feeling intimidated, she becomes even more excited. She believes the challenge will give her the perfect opportunity to demonstrate her abilities as a maid. Determined to secure the position, she convinces herself that she absolutely must be hired. Looking at the grand entrance, she assumes it is reserved for the noble family and reasons that the servants' entrance must surely be located at the back of the estate. Before she can move any farther, a young woman suddenly steps forward and asks who she is. Melody turns toward the unfamiliar girl and is immediately struck by her beauty. She has an elegant appearance that would captivate almost anyone. However, Melody quickly notices several troubling details. The girl's waist appears unusually slender, her skin and hair look dry and neglected, and the dress she wears is old and worn from extensive use. Melody politely explains that she saw the maid recruitment notice at the Commerce Guild and introduces herself as an applicant for the position. The young woman seems surprised and asks whether Melody truly came because of that advertisement. Without hesitation, she insists that they should continue the discussion in the dining room immediately. Taking Melody by the hand, she warmly leads her toward the mansion. As they walk, Melody becomes increasingly concerned. Since she is applying as a servant, she believes it is improper for her to enter through the main entrance and thinks she should instead use the servants' entrance at the back. However, the young woman reassures her that there is nothing to worry about because she has personally permitted her to enter through the front. A moment later, the young woman introduces herself as Luciana Rudelberg. The revelation leaves Melody stunned. She immediately realizes that the beautiful girl standing before her is not a maid at all but the daughter of Count Rudelberg and, therefore, her prospective employer. Once inside the mansion, Melody is astonished to see Luciana personally preparing tea for her guest. The sight surprises her so much that she instinctively protests, insisting that the young lady should not be making tea herself. Even back in Melody's own territory, she always prepared tea personally, and she eagerly offers to take over, promising to brew an exceptional cup of black tea. Luciana hesitantly asks whether Melody is truly capable of doing so, and Melody confidently assures her that she can leave everything in her hands. Before beginning, Melody asks when the water was collected. Luciana explains that she drew it from the well the previous day and believes it is still perfectly usable. Melody gently explains that, although the water is safe, it is unfortunately unsuitable for brewing the finest cup of tea. Using her magic, Melody purifies the water, astonishing Luciana, who asks whether she is truly capable of using magic. Melody calmly explains that she will begin brewing immediately and asks Luciana to wait just a little longer. As she prepares the tea, she explains that freshly drawn water containing plenty of fresh air is ideal for brewing. The trapped air creates a natural convection current when the hot water is poured into the teapot, causing the tea leaves to gently rise and fall. This movement, known as jumping, allows the leaves to fully release their flavor and aroma, producing a far richer cup of tea. After carefully completing the process, Melody announces that the tea is ready. Luciana takes a sip and is immediately amazed. The tea tastes incredibly delicious, and its fragrance is completely different from anything she expected. Despite being made from the cheapest tea leaves that an ordinary poor family could afford, the beverage possesses a richness she never imagined possible. She admits that she can hardly believe a single brewing technique could create such an extraordinary difference in taste. Encouraged by the result, Luciana asks whether this means Melody will now be working at the estate. Melody eagerly begins to accept the offer with gratitude before quickly stopping herself. She politely explains that she would first like to discuss the matter with the housekeeper regarding the recruitment process, believing there may be other applicants or formal procedures that still need to be completed. Luciana quietly informs her that there is no housekeeper. Confused, Melody assumes Luciana means there are simply no other applicants. However, Luciana clarifies the situation even further. She explains that Melody would be the only maid and indeed the only servant working in the entire Rudelberg household. The unexpected revelation leaves Melody completely stunned as she repeats the words in disbelief, struggling to comprehend that she alone would be responsible for managing the entire noble estate. The scene then transitions to the Royal Paradisia Higher Education Academy, located in the kingdom's capital. It is the prestigious academy where every noble child in the kingdom is required to study for 3 years after reaching the appropriate age. Luciana Rudelberg is no exception to the kingdom's educational tradition, as she is scheduled to enroll at the Royal Paradisia Higher Education Academy that year. Originally, she is supposed to travel to the royal capital together with her parents. However, because of unrest caused by rebels within their territory, Luciana is forced to leave ahead of them and arrive at the estate on her own. Instead of finding a welcoming noble residence, she is greeted by what appears to be a haunted house. The mansion has been left in an appalling state. The only servant remaining is an elderly maid, but even she has already retired after becoming unable to continue working. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, Luciana repeatedly encourages herself not to lose heart. She reminds herself that she has always taken care of her own needs while living in her family's territory. With that determination, she begins handling everything herself. She prepares unappetizing meals, struggles through endless chores, and even sleeps in a bedroom covered with thick layers of dust. Although every task is exhausting, she continues reassuring herself that everything will be fine and that she is capable of enduring it. She eventually realizes that she will also have to leave the estate to purchase essential supplies. At that very moment, Melody arrives. After learning the true situation, Melody confirms that the advertisement's description of all duties literally means that she alone is expected to perform every household task. Luciana gently explains that she does not expect Melody to accomplish everything. She tells her that completing whatever she reasonably can will be more than enough, and she promises to help with the work herself whenever possible. Rather than feeling discouraged, Melody becomes even more enthusiastic. She sincerely thanks Luciana and excitedly declares that she wishes to begin working immediately. Luciana cannot hide her surprise. She asks whether Melody is truly certain, considering that she would be responsible for managing the entire household almost entirely by herself. Melody confidently assures her that she is absolutely certain. In fact, she never imagined she would be entrusted with every aspect of running such a grand estate. Instead of viewing it as an impossible burden, she considers it an incredible honor. Luciana watches in complete confusion, unable to understand why Melody appears so delighted by such an overwhelming responsibility. Meanwhile, Melody internally celebrates her extraordinary good fortune. She never expected that every duty in a noble household would become her personal responsibility, and she considers herself unbelievably lucky. Looking forward to the future, she happily tells Luciana that she is excited to work alongside her. Before beginning her duties, however, Melody decides that there is one essential matter to address first. She explains that a proper maid requires an appropriate uniform and confidently states that she can create one immediately. She asks Luciana to show her to a fitting room so she can prepare herself. Using her magic, Melody instantly transforms her clothing into a beautifully crafted maid uniform. After completing the transformation, she thanks Luciana for waiting and proudly asks for her opinion. Luciana honestly replies that she thinks the uniform is adorable. Melody happily thanks her for the compliment, explaining that a proper maid should naturally dress this way. Luciana admits that she never knew magic could be used to create clothing like that. Melody proudly explains that the uniform is far more than an ordinary outfit. She personally crafted it and even enchanted it with a powerful protective spell, making it tougher than the average suit of armor. Luciana laughs awkwardly, commenting that it is certainly the strangest joke she has ever heard. Unfortunately, Melody quietly realizes that it is not a joke at all. Without wasting any more time, Melody begins organizing her priorities. She concludes that the estate must first provide the three necessities of life: food, clothing, and shelter. Above all else, restoring the mansion itself must become their highest priority. Even she admits that bringing such a massive estate back into proper condition would be extremely difficult for a single person. However, she suddenly smiles after realizing one important fact: she is not truly alone. Immediately, Melody casts the spell Alter Ego, creating numerous identical clones of herself. She addresses every one of her duplicates, making sure they all understand their assigned responsibilities. In perfect unison, every clone confidently confirms that they know exactly what they must do. The army of Melodies quickly disperses throughout the enormous mansion, with each clone taking responsibility for a different task and beginning work simultaneously. To further increase her efficiency, Melody uses another alter self transformation, granting herself a pair of wings that allow her to fly freely around. The prices in the city are so high that even buying proper drinking water is completely beyond Luciana's budget. However, dying is not an option, even if she is living in a haunted mansion. While wandering through the surrounding area, she notices mushrooms and white flowers growing beneath the trees, and she happily gathers everything she can find. As she continues exploring, she spots several birds flying overhead. She immediately uses her magic, confident that a bird targeted by her spell can never escape. Before long, she is skillfully preparing the bird she has caught. Even she is surprised by how large the bird is, leaving her with more than enough food. To preserve the excess, she stores it inside her dimensional storage. By the time she finishes, it has taken longer than she expected. She decides to return to the servants' dining room by creating a magical service door. The door resembles the famous Anywhere door from Doraemon, allowing her to travel instantly. She cannot help but admire how incredible magic truly is, thinking about how convenient such an ability makes everyday life. At the same time, it becomes increasingly apparent that no one around Melody questions her magical abilities anymore. Their perception of magic is gradually slipping away at an alarming rate. Luciana reflects on this and wonders why she never realized that her own mother had eventually become capable of casting only light magic. The scene then shifts to Luciana, who is quietly lost in thought. Melody approaches her carrying something for her. Luciana feels grateful and thinks that Melody does not need to trouble herself, especially when she is already so busy. However, Melody willingly encourages her to have a cup of tea and take a short break. Later, Luciana decides that she should visit the restroom. As she walks there, she notices Melody already working nearby. Melody immediately offers her assistance. Luciana explains that she is only heading to the restroom and has already completed most of the cleaning there, so everything should already be in order. As she continues walking, Luciana reflects on how incredibly fast and precise Melody is in every task she performs. She also notices that an area which had been cracked earlier now appears perfectly maintained. Once again, Melody is already standing there, informing her that the restrooms have just been cleaned. Luciana begins to realize that Melody seems to devote herself entirely to cleaning. At the same time, Melody is somehow also preparing dinner. Luciana cannot understand how a single person could possibly manage all of these responsibilities without help. Her confusion only deepens when she suddenly notices 3 different Melodies working simultaneously. One Melody is preparing the soup. Another is focused on the main course while mentioning that there will surely be some leftover meat for Luciana to add to the soup later. The third Melody is washing dishes while wondering whether all of them have already been cleaned. Luciana stares at the unbelievable sight in complete shock. As the different Melodies notice her expression, they ask whether something is wrong. Before she can even respond, another Melody appears carrying a broom, followed by yet another Melody engaged in a completely different task. One after another, every Melody calls out to her. Unable to process the impossible scene unfolding before her eyes, Luciana lets out a loud scream. After some time passes, a delicious meal is prepared. Luciana gratefully enjoys the food and is deeply impressed by its wonderful taste. Among all the dishes, the herb-roasted chicken served as the main course becomes her favorite. She realizes that it has been a very long time since she last had the opportunity to eat meat. Curious about the meal, Luciana wonders where Melody obtained the chicken. Melody explains that the meat came from a bird living in the nearby forest. Luciana immediately suspects that Melody may have used magic in the same way she herself had done earlier. Melody also mentions that all of the herbs and spices used in the meal came from the abundant forest nearby, making cooking remarkably convenient. Luciana becomes puzzled because she does not remember any such forest existing in the area. The only famous forest she knows is the Great Forest of Vanderand, a land feared as a place of evil. Melody appears unfamiliar with the name, prompting Luciana to reflect that the Great Forest of Vanderand is an extremely dangerous place where no one should ever venture. Melody quietly assures herself that she will remain careful. Feeling sincerely grateful, Luciana reflects on everything Melody has done for her throughout the day and realizes how fortunate she is to have someone like Melody by her side. Melody humbly dismisses the praise as unnecessary before deciding to prepare another cup of tea for her. The scene finally shifts elsewhere, revealing someone visibly worried after learning that an intruder has entered the Great Forest of Vanderand. The head wizard of the kingdom, Seven, is visibly worried when the king asks him whether something is wrong. Seven confirms that his detection wards have discovered an intruder within the Great Forest of Vandergand, one of the world's great magical hindrances. The forest is filled with beasts possessing magical powers, and such creatures can only be harmed through magical attacks. It is considered one of the most dangerous and impenetrable areas in the world, a land of evil and a habitat for demons that must never be disturbed. The king immediately asks whether the intruder is still somewhere within the forest. Seven explains that his detection wards are no longer able to detect any traces, leaving them with no way of knowing where the intruder has gone. The king cannot help but wonder what on earth someone could possibly be doing inside such a place. If the situation is truly that serious, then they will need soldiers. He orders Seven to search the areas surrounding the forest for anything out of the ordinary and, most importantly, to make certain that the intruder's movements are detected and tracked. The king is visibly frustrated as he wonders just who the hell this intruder could possibly be. Yet there is one thing no one is going to tell the king: the mysterious intruder is actually a maid. The scene then cuts to Melody and Luciana, where Melody is asking Luciana whether she wants to invite her friends over for another tea party. Luciana agrees, explaining that she wants a redo after what happened during the previous one. Incidentally, after the first time Melody entered the forest, she has only entered it through spatial transfer, meaning that she has not been detected by the sage again. Luciana then explains that both of her friends are childhood friends. One of them is Millie Aria, while the other is Beatrice. Their families' houses are located right next to each other. Originally, the land had been sold by the previous count of Luciana's family after his business failed. In a way, Luciana's family owes the two families because they purchased the land at a time when they were struggling to pay off their debts. For some reason, however, the previous count had been visibly furious that the two families had taken their ancestral land. Fortunately, he is replaced before the situation can become any worse, and the current count manages to reconcile with both families. As a result, the worst possible scenario, in which there could have been a terrible relationship between neighboring territories, is successfully avoided. Since then, the three families have maintained a friendly relationship. Luciana explains that she now has to erase the impression she left during that last tea party, and she asks Melody what she thinks about inviting them again. Melody agrees that, for the time being, inviting them seems like the best choice. She thinks everything should be fine. Moreover, Luciana can now invite her friends without having to worry, since she genuinely wants to invite them this time. Melody has already groomed Luciana's hair, and she has even resewn her dresses for her. Because of this, Melody suggests that they hold the tea party 1 week from now. Luciana is delighted by the idea and immediately hugs Melody, thanking her profusely. Melody points out that Luciana should not be hugging her maid, but Luciana makes it clear that, despite what Melody says, she is not actually refusing the hug. Her body is being completely honest about how happy she is. Melody cannot help but wonder where Luciana has even learned such words. Luciana apologizes to Melody, but she admits that she is simply too happy to contain her excitement. Melody then realizes that she will apparently have to practice with Luciana before the tea party. After all, this is part of a lady's education. Luciana suddenly realizes that she has opened a box she probably should never have opened. Mizunami Ritosaku, better known as Melody, is a genius who had already reached extraordinary heights in her previous life, to the extent that her name is destined to go down in history. She is both a natural genius and an exceptionally hard-working one, the kind of person who can accomplish practically anything once she sets her mind to it. Put simply, Melody is capable of doing almost anything. Even when it comes to becoming a maid, Melody has dedicated herself to mastering every possible skill. As a result, her teaching policy is exceptionally strict. Her standards are impossibly high, and her lessons leave little room for laziness or excuses. Luciana soon finds herself collapsing under the intensity of Melody's training. Melody notices her condition and becomes concerned, asking whether she is really all right. However, rather than ending the lesson, Melody simply decides that they should resume their training. Luciana falls down once again, meaning that they have no choice but to start the training all over again. The training is unbelievably difficult, and it is so severe that Luciana's natural talents as a lady seem destined to perish before they can even properly bloom. Nevertheless, the days continue to pass, and eventually, the day before the tea party arrives, Melody is out shopping when someone accidentally splatters something all over her. Another maid, who is checking a scent or inspecting something nearby, immediately notices what she has done to Melody. She is horrified by the accident and quickly apologizes, wondering how she could possibly have done such a thing. Melody calmly assures her that it is fine, but the other maid immediately takes hold of her hand and insists that she is truly sorry. She explains that the mansion where she works is just down the street and offers to prepare a bath for Melody. She urges Melody to come inside quickly because the stains on her clothes will become permanent if she does not wash them soon. Before leaving, the maid also apologizes to the auntie running the shop and pays for the fruit vinegar that caused the accident. She tells the shopkeeper that this is the cost of the fruit vinegar and that they really need to hurry. With that, Melody ends up following the maid. The place turns out to be a small house bordering the commoners section of the city. Perhaps the family belongs to one of the lower ranks of nobility, such as a baron, or perhaps they are connected to the knights, who are among the lowest-ranking members of the nobility. The maid informs Melody that the hot water is already ready for her. She tells Melody to go ahead and take her bath while she washes Melody's clothes. In the meantime, Melody soon finds herself standing in the bathing area. She knows that she has no choice, so she finally gives in and steps into the bath. She has always thought that the baths in this world are surprisingly elaborate. The bathtub itself is made of ceramic and follows a distinctly Western style, yet the bathing area is arranged in a way that resembles a Japanese bath, with a separate space for washing before entering the tub. The entire setting carries a certain late 19th century English atmosphere, mixed with the somewhat rickety features of an older era. Overall, it resembles medieval Europe, except that magic has been incorporated into everyday life. At the same time, the toilet and bathing customs are distinctly Japanese in style. It is almost as though this world has been created by taking the best aspects of different periods and cultures from Earth's history and combining them into one strange but fascinating civilization. Melody cannot help but wonder when the last time was that she had a bath prepared for her by someone else. It has certainly been a while. As she relaxes, Melody reflects on how she can finally return to being herself. Her thoughts drift toward the same color as her mother's eyes, bringing back memories of the woman whose words have remained with her. She is a maid now, and if she is going to be a maid, then there is only one thing she wants to become: the best maid in the world. The number one maid in the world. But Melody wonders how exactly she is supposed to become that. She begins thinking about what her mother meant when she spoke of becoming the best maid in the world. What exactly did she mean when she left those words behind? Melody is certain that if she truly becomes the best, she will be able to handle any kind of job with ease. For the time being, however, she still believes that the best way to achieve that goal is to become the old, worst maid at Ruderberg Manor. Her previous experience as a maid was mostly self-taught, but this is the first time she has actually become involved in the real work of being a maid. Right now, she is nothing more than a newly hired maid. That means there is still an enormous amount for her to learn. Melody silently makes a promise to her mother that she will become the number one maid in the world. From now on, she is determined to gain as much experience as possible and steadily improve herself through actual work. Eventually, Melody steps out of the bath, feeling considerably warmer and more refreshed. She thinks that the bath has warmed her up quite nicely. Now that she is finished, she decides that once she gets back, she will ask Paula to return her maid uniform to her. By the way, Melody has inherited her mother's serene eyes, not to mention her father's striking silver hair. Her father, however, remains remarkably unaware of just how much attention these features can attract. When Melody opens the door, she is immediately met with the rather unexpected sight of a man standing there completely unclothed. The two of them simply stare at each other in mutual confusion, neither seeming to understand how they have ended up in this ridiculous situation. Melody reacts on instinct and unintentionally casts a bit of magic on his private area. She then wonders what on earth is wrong with this man and cannot believe that he has suddenly wandered into the bathroom without even asking first. At precisely that moment, Paula arrives and wonders what is wrong with Melody. However, the moment she looks inside, she notices that her master is there as well, making the entire situation considerably more awkward. A while earlier, in the royal capital at Regent-based residence, the knight Lectius is being informed that he must attend the upcoming ball. Lectius does not think anyone will particularly care whether a knight like him attends or not. Unfortunately for him, the deputy prime minister of the kingdom, Count Cloud, has a rather different opinion. Count Cloud points out that the lady in charge has been complaining every time Lectius is absent throughout the year. Furthermore, His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, is going to be unusually present at the school, so Lectius is expected to attend the ball without fail. With no other option available, Lectius reluctantly accepts his fate. Secretly, however, he wishes he could simply have gone to the neighboring country instead. It would certainly have been less troublesome. The boss may say all the right things, but the reality is that he has essentially sold out his own subordinate to save his own skin. Lectius is therefore given another troublesome order. He is supposed to bring a female companion to the ball. Lectius is understandably confused by this demand. Count Cloud reminds him that he has already mentioned the matter before. Lectius supposedly has to deal with 10,000 women approaching him whenever he is alone, and apparently, the ladies will naturally flock toward him anyway. Count Cloud even laments that, if only they had managed to find his daughter, he would have happily allowed Lectius to escort her. According to Count Cloud, Lectius would make an excellent escort, especially because he would never dream of laying a hand on his daughter. It is an oddly specific compliment, but Lectius has little room to argue. After Serene's death and the report concerning her daughter, Celeste, Count Cloud has sent someone familiar with the geography of the neighboring country to search for her, since Celeste is supposedly heading there. Unfortunately, there have been no reports of her being found yet. Because Celeste is the child of a count and his servant, the search continues discreetly. They want to make certain that she does not attract unwanted attention while they are looking for her. Count Cloud cannot help wondering how she is doing and whether she is safe wherever she may be. Meanwhile, Lectius finally opens his eyes, believing that he has found her. However, the moment his vision clears, he sees Melody standing in front of him. For a brief moment, he wonders whether his eyes are playing tricks on him. He immediately recognizes her as the girl he has been searching for. Melody, in turn, becomes curious as she wonders whether he actually remembers her. Lectius confirms that she is indeed the girl he met before, the one who was looking for a carriage station to the royal capital. He wonders whether his memory is correct, but Melody is simply relieved that he remembers her. Lectius then becomes confused about another important matter. Why exactly is this girl inside his mansion? Just then, Paula arrives, giving him the perfect opportunity to ask why he has been sleeping there in the first place. Paula looks at him with a mixture of innocence and absolute confidence as she questions whether he truly does not remember what happened. She explains that she had told him she would introduce him to a friend and that she would wait for him in the reception room. Of course, this is an outright lie. The truth is that Melody used electric magic to erase part of Lectius's memory, essentially performing a partial memory wipe through electroshock. The exact effect and duration of the spell are still unknown, but Paula witnessed what happened to Lectius and quickly manages to put all the pieces together. Paula then decides that, in that case, she might as well introduce Melody properly. She presents Melody as her new friend, whom she has apparently met that very day. Melody introduces herself politely and expresses how nice it is to meet him. Lectius immediately thinks that she is beautiful. At first, he assumes that her greeting is merely a simple courtesy, but there is something about the way she carries herself that makes it feel remarkably sophisticated. Her elegance catches him completely off guard. Then, almost as if fate itself is reminding him of his responsibilities, Count Cloud's earlier words suddenly come back to him. He has been told that Lectius does not need to be picky about whom he brings, he simply needs to find someone who can accompany him to the ball. Preferably, she should be a woman who knows how to conduct herself properly and will not embarrass him in front of everyone. Lectius looks at Melody again. Perhaps, he thinks, he has just found the perfect candidate. On the other hand, the tea party with Luciana has gone surprisingly well. After all the exhausting preparation and training, everything finally seems to have proceeded smoothly, making all of Luciana's hard work worthwhile. For once, nobody falls over, nothing disastrous happens, and the tea does not become a battlefield. That alone can practically be considered a miracle. The Lutherberg territory lies in the northern part of the kingdom. It was originally one of the most affluent territories in the entire country. However, everything changes when the previous count's business fails, forcing him to sell most of his land. From then on, the family comes to be known as House Lutherberg. The enormous debt is eventually paid off over several decades, but the territory itself remains poor. Even so, the people continue to hold deep respect for the count's management of the estate because he places their welfare above everything else. Last year, the territory suffers through a particularly bad harvest. The memory is still fresh in everyone's minds because, rather than allowing the people to suffer, the count takes the burden of the shortfall in tax revenue upon himself. He reduces the tax rate and makes certain that no one within his territory starves to death. His dedication earns him tremendous praise, and he is eventually appointed to the highest administrative position in the kingdom, the office of Prime Minister. The current head of the family, a man who values purity and poverty above meaningless extravagance, is named Hugus. As the family arrives at their villa in the capital, Count Hugus looks around with a sense of curiosity. Melody approaches them and politely greets them, welcoming them to the residence while addressing them as master and mistress. The count and his wife look at her in surprise. They cannot help wondering whether the maid is not supposed to be much older. After all, Melody looks remarkably young to be handling everything around the mansion. Just then, Luciana finally arrives and happily announces that they are finally here. Her father immediately tells her that it has been a long time and that he has been worried about sending her alone to the royal capital. However, judging by how well she seems to be doing, everything appears to have turned out fine. Luciana suddenly goes over and gives him a slap. Everyone freezes. Her father looks completely bewildered. while the others wonder what she could possibly be doing all of a sudden. Luciana makes it clear that she would never actually hurt her father, but her patience has finally run out. She is talking about the mansion. No matter how much her family may be prone to carelessness, this mansion is simply too much. Her father looks around and innocently wonders what she is complaining about. As far as he is concerned, the mansion is beautiful. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. Luciana becomes even more frustrated. He is saying that now, but he has absolutely no idea what has been happening inside this mansion. She cannot believe that he sent his only daughter to live in what practically felt like a haunted house. Her father, still completely confused, wonders what exactly about the place makes her think it is such a wreck. Even her mother joins in, remarking that the mansion is so much more than merely a home away from home. To her, it is a beautiful residence. Luciana stares at them as though they have both lost their minds. She explains that everything they are seeing now has been fixed by Melody. Without Melody, they would still be living in a genuine haunted house. Melody then steps forward and politely introduces herself to the Count and Countess, explaining that it is a pleasure to meet them for the first time. The two of them look at her carefully. Then they glance at their daughter. Something about Luciana seems different as well. In fact, they cannot help thinking that she looks much prettier than before. Their attention soon returns to Melody, and they wonder where Luciana even managed to get such a beautiful dress. Luciana explains that it is actually the same dress they gave her 6 months ago. The only difference is that Melody cleaned it. She even casually mentions that, if they give her their clothes later, she can clean those as well. The Count and Countess stare at her, completely puzzled. They wonder what exactly she means by that. Before anyone can question it further, Melody calmly announces that lunch is ready for everyone. Luciana tells her father that everything will be explained in detail over lunch and that he would do well to reflect on the matter until then. The Count, however, remains puzzled. He had believed that the maid working in the household was an older woman, so he wonders whether Luciana has hired an additional maid. Luciana explains that the previous maid has been forced to retire because of a bad back, and Melody is her replacement. This only raises another question: if Melody is the new maid, then who has prepared the meal? Luciana points out that Melody has, of course, prepared it. Her parents immediately notice that Melody is standing right there and cannot understand how she could have prepared the entire meal while also being present with them. Luciana explains that Melody has not actually needed to perform such duties lately, but she deliberately asked her to do so today in order to demonstrate the point more effectively. Her parents are left completely bewildered when they suddenly notice that there are 3 Melodies in the room. Their confusion makes them wonder whether Melody is somehow a triplet. Luciana assures them that after seeing everything for themselves, they will no longer be able to make such an assumption. Almost immediately, even more Melodies begin appearing throughout the residence, each carrying out different tasks with astonishing efficiency. For the second time in a single month, the Litherberg residence is filled with screams. Several days later, Melody checks whether Luciana has forgotten anything before leaving. Luciana assures her that everything is fine. She explains that she has taken everything out of her bag and checked it the previous night, making certain that she has not forgotten anything. She then asks Melody to please take care of the household while she is away. Luciana's mother expresses how much she wishes she could have taken Melody along with them. In her eyes, it would have been wonderful for the two of them to bask in Luciana's brilliance together. Luciana immediately becomes embarrassed by the praise. She is only attending the entrance ceremony, after all, and does not think it is anything particularly remarkable. Her mother, however, considers even that achievement brilliant enough and makes it clear that both she and the Count are immensely proud of her. By this point, Melody has completely integrated herself into the Litherberg household. She is genuinely relieved and happy that the master and mistress have accepted her so warmly. She is also becoming accustomed to the work, and before Luciana and her parents return, she intends to thoroughly clean the room. As Melody continues tidying, she suddenly notices something among Luciana's belongings. It is a Royal Academy admission certificate bearing Luciana's name. The sight of it immediately reminds Melody of what Luciana told her earlier. Luciana had specifically said that she had taken everything out of her bag and checked it the previous night. Yet the admission certificate is still here. Melody's expression changes at once. Without wasting another moment, she immediately changes her clothes and prepares to leave the estate. The scene then cuts to Melody aboard a passenger flight. As she settles into her seat, a young boy accompanying a girl notices Melody and immediately becomes interested in the beautiful woman sitting nearby. He appears to think that he should be the one sitting beside her, but the girl next to him quickly shuts down his shameless behavior and apologizes to Melody for his manners. After some time, Melody learns that the two of them are high school students. She is surprised that their parents are willing to let a pair of high school students travel abroad together, especially when they appear to be traveling without their families. However, the two immediately make it clear that they are not a couple. They explain that the trip is not simply a private journey for the two of them. They are actually participating in a larger tour connected to a popular game that is currently attracting a great deal of attention. As part of a special giveaway, they have won a first edition version of the game's album, which includes a tour of famous locations throughout the United Kingdom. This unexpected prize is what has brought them onto the flight. The boy explains that his sister was actually the one who originally wanted to go. Unfortunately, allowing two young girls who are both minors to travel abroad on their own would not have been considered a very good idea. Silver Saint and Five Oath is an O-tone game that becomes an enormous hit among young girls. The heroine, Cecilia, is a young woman who falls into the depths of despair after losing her mother. She is eventually taken in by her father, and her life changes completely. Instead of continuing to live as a governess, she suddenly finds herself living as a member of the nobility. Following her father's instructions, Cecilia enrolls at the Royal Academy in the royal capital, where she encounters a variety of people and becomes involved in numerous events. The story is supposed to begin during the entrance ceremony of the Royal Academy, when Cecilia, the heroine, meets Christopher, one of the game's principal love interests, for the very first time. That is what is supposed to happen. However, something is already going wrong. Near the passageway leading toward the ceremony hall, Christopher suddenly bumps into a young woman. She immediately apologizes, explaining that she has been in a hurry and failed to notice where she was going. Christopher looks at her carefully, struck by the strange feeling that he may have seen her somewhere before. For a moment, he wonders whether she is someone he knows, but he quickly dismisses the thought. No, he must have mistaken her for someone else. What catches his attention next is her appearance. She is dressed as a maid, which makes him wonder what a maid is doing inside the academy on a day when the new students are gathering for their entrance ceremony. The young woman explains that she has come to deliver something to her lady because the lady forgot it. She needs to take it to her quickly and therefore has to hurry to the waiting room. Christopher, being familiar with the academy's layout, points her in the right direction. If she is searching for the new students' waiting room, she simply needs to continue straight down the aisle and turn at the second corner on the right. The waiting room is located just beyond there. The maid expresses her gratitude and prepares to leave. However, just before she disappears around the corner, she stops and turns back. She apologizes for her rudeness, but she cannot help noticing that Christopher also appears to be one of the new students. She wonders whether he is certain that he does not need to be in the waiting room himself at this moment. Christopher assures her that he will be there shortly. Satisfied with his answer, the maid gives him another polite nod before finally hurrying away. Christopher remains where he is for a moment, watching her disappear. Then Max approaches from behind. He has finally managed to find Christopher, and he is clearly relieved. More importantly, he reminds Christopher that he is not simply another student. He is the Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of the Kingdom, and he has a very important responsibility waiting for him. Christopher has been selected as the representative who will deliver the student's address during the entrance ceremony. He is supposed to return to the ceremony immediately. Max cannot understand why the Crown Prince is still standing around in the passageway. He also reminds Christopher that the Marquis's daughter is already waiting inside the hall. Considering her status and the circumstances surrounding the academy, she is one of the strongest candidates to become Christopher's future fiancée. From Max's perspective, the situation looks suspicious. He begins to wonder whether Christopher has secretly arranged to meet another woman. Even if Max were willing to overlook such behavior, His Majesty certainly would not. Christopher quickly makes it clear that this is not what he means. The woman he is waiting for is not the Marquis's daughter. Something else is wrong. The heroine, the saint, has not appeared yet. Christopher knows how the story is supposed to begin. He remembers the scenario perfectly. Normally, the heroine should be a silver-haired girl who arrives late to the entrance ceremony. She is supposed to be in a hurry, rushing through the passageways because she is already behind schedule. Then, at precisely the right moment, she is supposed to collide with Christopher at the corner of the passageway. That encounter is the beginning of their story. That is the scene Christopher has been expecting. He has been waiting for the silver-haired heroine, but the girl who has just collided with him is not silver-haired. She is a black-haired maid. Christopher insists that he is certain of what he saw. The scenario is supposed to begin with the heroine being late, panicking about her tardiness, and accidentally bumping into him at the corner of the passageway. But the person Christopher has bumped into is a black-haired maid for some inexplicable reason. She is extremely cute, but she is definitely not the heroine. Max begins to wonder whether Christopher is referring to a particular girl, but even he cannot believe that could be the case. Christopher, meanwhile, is becoming increasingly distressed. If things continue like this, the Demon King will eventually revive. The heroine is the key to preventing that from happening. How can the saint, the very person who is destined to save the world, have failed to appear? Just then, another person steps forward and questions Christopher's frantic behavior. She asks what is wrong with him and why he is shouting in the middle of the academy. The girl is Annie Mary, the villainess of Silver Saint and Five Oath. Annie reminds Christopher that she already told him about today's important event and wonders whether he has somehow forgotten it. Christopher immediately insists that it is not his fault. He has checked the time repeatedly and made absolutely certain that he would not forget the schedule. Neither of them realizes that their current predicament is actually the result of something far more extraordinary. Christopher and Annie are both reincarnators. In their previous lives, the two of them played the Otome game Silver Saint and Five Oaths, and they have now been reincarnated into the very world depicted in that game. Christopher has awakened in the body of the game's first love interest, the Crown Prince, while Annie has become the villainess who is destined to play a very different role in the original story. They both know exactly what is supposed to happen. They also know what will happen if the game's story progresses as it is meant to. The Demon King, who has been sealed away since ancient times, will eventually awaken. The only person capable of stopping him is the saint, the heroine of the game. Without the saint's power, the world is destined to perish. That is why Christopher is so desperate. He is waiting for the heroine, yet she has not appeared. The scenario should have already begun, but the silver-haired girl who is supposed to arrive late and accidentally collide with him is nowhere to be found. Instead, the only person he has encountered is a black-haired maid who has nothing to do with the original storyline. Christopher cannot understand how everything has gone so wrong. If the heroine does not appear, then the entire chain of events leading to the defeat of the Demon King will never begin, and if that happens, everyone in this world is going to die. Max can only stare at him in disbelief before grabbing Christopher and beginning to drag him away toward the ceremony. He cannot help thinking that, if Christopher were not constantly becoming distracted by the game's scenario, he would actually be the perfect crown prince. Annie, meanwhile, has her own thoughts about the situation. She cannot believe that the person behaving like this is supposed to be the game's prime love interest. The two reincarnators are therefore left facing an impossible situation. They know the original story, they know the fate awaiting the world, and they know exactly who the heroine is supposed to be. But the heroine has not appeared. The story of the Otome game that was originally supposed to begin on this very day has therefore failed to start properly. And while Christopher, Annie, and Max are struggling to understand what has happened, the true heroine, Luciana, is dealing with an entirely different problem. Luciana is currently throwing a tantrum because she desperately needs a male escort for the ball being held that evening. Every year, on the night of the Royal Academy's matriculation ceremony, the spring ball is held as an opportunity for young nobles to make their social debut and meet the other members of high society. Luciana has turned 15 this year, which means that tonight is also her own official debut into society. Unfortunately, the spring ball has a special rule that is unique to the event. Any young lady making her debut at a social gathering must be accompanied by a male escort. Luciana has only just learned about this requirement. Neither her father nor her mother mentioned it beforehand. From Luciana's perspective, the situation is completely unreasonable. Men are allowed to attend the ball by themselves, so why does she need to find an escort simply because she is a young woman making her debut? She also points out that her parents never had to deal with such a problem themselves. When they first entered high society, her father and mother already had each other as partners, so neither of them ever experienced the difficulty of finding someone to accompany them. Because of that, they apparently forgot that their daughter would eventually have to face the same custom. Luciana is left with no escort and very little time before the spring ball begins. Melody can only wonder what they are supposed to do now. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Cinderella. Every day, she devoted herself to sweeping the floors, washing clothes, preparing meals, and tackling every other manner of chore that happened to exist within the household. All of these chores were hers to handle, and not a single day passed without her finding some strange sense of joy and pride in her work. Most people would have called such a life exhausting, but Cinderella seemed to regard a pile of dirty laundry almost as if it were a personal invitation to demonstrate her greatness. Soon after, she began to dabble in the world of magic, and this only made her even more efficient at her chosen profession. With magic at her fingertips, she gradually became an all-purpose maid capable of handling practically anything that could possibly go wrong in a household. If something needed cleaning, Cinderella cleaned it. If something needed preparing, Cinderella prepared it. If something needed fixing, there was a very good chance Cinderella was already halfway through fixing it before anyone else had even noticed the problem. Then, one day, Cinderella caught wind of some exciting news. There was going to be a grand ball at the castle. With the power of magic in hand, she easily prepared a graceful dress and an elegant carriage so that her young mistress could attend the ball in proper style. Cinderella worked with remarkable skill and efficiency, making sure every little detail was perfect. Her master, seeing all the preparations, wondered whether Cinderella herself was planning to attend the ball as well. Surely, after doing so much work and possessing such impressive magical abilities, she deserved at least one evening of enjoyment. Yet Cinderella, being Cinderella, seemed completely baffled by the very idea. Why would a maid go to a ball? In her mind, attending a grand royal celebration was apparently far less important than continuing her perfectly peaceful routine of sweeping floors and completing household chores. With that settled, Cinderella simply wished her master a safe trip and returned to her work as though nothing particularly remarkable had happened. No dramatic transformation, no midnight deadline, no mysterious glass slipper, and certainly no running away from the castle in a panic. Just another peaceful day in the life of Cinderella, the maid. Or perhaps the better question is whether Cinderella is the maid, or whether the maid is Cinderella. Melody is a terrific maid. She always helps Luciana with her flawless work and impressive magic, and that is precisely why Luciana trusts her so much. A daughter of a noble family making her social debut must be accompanied by a maid escort, after all. Unfortunately, Luciana has accidentally forgotten such an important rule, and now that the moment has arrived, she can think of no one other than Melody who could possibly help her. Come to think of it, Melody is new to the royal capital as well, so there is no reason for her to have a particularly wide circle of acquaintances. Even so, she somehow manages to solve the problem in no time at all. Luciana can only feel relieved and delighted when Melody explains that the person she has found is a friend of hers and that they happened to run into each other earlier. However, Luciana's heart is practically pounding out of her chest when she realizes exactly who this supposed friend is. He is the Prime Minister's son. Max steps forward and introduces himself as a suitable escort for Luciana, the daughter of the Count, for the evening. The moment she hears this, Luciana realizes that Melody never actually told her that she had managed to find the Prime Minister's son as her escort. Of all the people she could possibly have brought along, she somehow ended up with one of the most important young men in the entire kingdom. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, Christopher is once again having what can only be described as a complete emotional breakdown. He is convinced that they are absolutely doomed. The heroine has disappeared from the story, the world is clearly going off the rails, and he has no idea what they are supposed to do now. If things continue like this, he is certain that everyone is going to die. Annie has heard enough of his dramatic lamentations and tells him to shut up. She is genuinely disappointed in him at this point. Christopher, naturally, reacts as though she has just announced his execution and starts wondering whether she is seriously planning to kill him. Annie considers the possibility for a moment and decides that it might not be such a terrible idea after all. Perhaps someone nicer could simply be reincarnated as the crown prince in his place. After all, Christopher is supposed to be the prime love interest, so he needs to start acting like one. Or, as Annie sarcastically puts it, perhaps he should at least try to behave like the sort of character who deserves to be called a proper love interest. Christopher immediately fires back that Annie is a villainess herself, so perhaps she should concentrate on sucking up to the prince instead of criticizing him. In the middle of their bickering, he calls her Anna, as though that somehow makes his argument more convincing. The two of them regain the memories of their past lives when they were only 6 years old. That was also when they first met one another, with Christopher being the crown prince and Annie being one of the candidates chosen to become his fiancée. Along with remembering the knowledge and experiences of their previous lives, they immediately understood the roles they were expected to play in this world. Christopher knew he was supposed to be the crown prince and one of the main romantic interests, while Annie understood that she had been assigned the role of the villainess. In other words, they had both received the world's instruction manual at the age of 6. Unfortunately, the manual seems to have developed several printing errors. Returning to the matter at hand, Annie admits that she still cannot believe the heroine has failed to appear. There is no doubt whatsoever that this is the world of Silver Saint and Five, the Otone game they played back in their previous lives. Everything about the world matches the game they remember. Christopher explains that this is precisely why he is so worried. If the story continues without the heroine appearing, they will have no trump cards left to use when the Demon King eventually returns. Their entire survival strategy depends on the events of the original game unfolding properly, and right now, the story seems determined to ignore its own script. Silver Saint and 5 is a dating simulation game in which the player chooses what the heroine says and does in order to advance the story and develop relationships with the various characters. Since the game takes place in a school setting, numerous events, including examinations and school festivals, are experienced through the form of mini-games. However, the romance is only one part of the game. Far more importantly, Silver Saint and 5 contains an enormous number of fantasy RPG elements, with the most prominent being the existence of both the Saint and the Demon King. Long ago, there was a Demon King who threatened the world and was eventually sealed away by a saint. The seal remained intact for generations, and the people of the present age gradually forgot the truth behind the ancient conflict. Then the heroine begins attending the academy. At almost exactly the same time, the seal on the Demon King begins to weaken. The heroine is the only person capable of stopping him because she has inherited the power of the saint from the distant past. Unfortunately, the knowledge surrounding both the saint and the Demon King has long since been forgotten by the rest of the world. That includes the heroine herself. As the story progresses, the Demon King is gradually unsealed, resulting in more and more strange incidents popping up throughout the academy. However, as if to counteract the rising threat of the Demon King, the heroine also begins to reawaken her hidden potential as the saint. After enduring all sorts of trials and tribulations within the academy, the heroine eventually steps into the library of the ancient, where she finally learns the true extent of the saint's powers and the responsibilities that come with them. While growing closer to her chosen love interest, the heroine faces humans and monsters manipulated by the Demon King, as well as spies from the Empire of Rotolo, which lies just north of the Kingdom of Theolas. Her rival in love, Annie, the villainess, is also caught up in these conflicts. Eventually, everything culminates in a climactic showdown during the Demon King's descent. And just when all hope seems to be lost, the heroine reflects on how she could never accept the passing of her mother. Even so, being with the hero has helped her realize that she cannot continue living in grief forever. For the first time, she truly wants to live. She refuses to be defeated by her past. Instead, she vows to continue living with the hero by her side. The heroine then swears a solemn and sincere oath, reaffirming her love and affection for the love interest she has chosen. Together, they unveil the true mission of a saint and purge the Demon King's darkness once and for all. A great oath for herself and others is sworn, the condition is fulfilled, and the blessing of silver is granted to the Holy Maiden. With that, the Demon King is defeated, bringing an era of peace to the entire land. As for the heroine, she successfully graduates from the academy, marries her chosen love interest, and lives happily ever after. A truly happy ending. Christopher, however, points out that this is pretty much exactly how the game goes. The Demon King will be reincarnated next, and they will definitely need the saint's power to oppose him. Annie then takes a look at the student register for those enrolling at the academy. They can check the list against their records and figure out which class the heroine is in. But Christopher soon realizes that something is terribly wrong. The heroine, Cecilia, is not enrolled in the academy. Annie has also checked with her contact in the Guild of Commerce, and there is no indication that Count Jackenbar has started purchasing women's products. In other words, the Count has not found the heroine yet. Annie reluctantly accepts that this is most likely the case. Fortunately, they at least know her name. Having both silver hair and lapis lazuli eyes is an extremely rare combination, so it should not be particularly difficult to spot her if they search hard enough. Unfortunately, her name is not nearly as useful a clue as it sounds. The name Cecilia was only given to her by the Count after he took her in. Her heroine's mother is a former rare, so the Count decided to give the girl a new name for the sake of appearances. In the game, this particular part of the setting is barely mentioned. The details were supposed to be revealed in the game's fanbook, which was scheduled to be released later. Unfortunately, she died before she could ever get her hands on it. She had been so excited to finally see the heroine in person, yet now she cannot help wondering why Cecilia never showed up. She had been hoping to see that mysterious yet sweet smile with her own eyes. Christopher, meanwhile, cannot help pointing out that she really does love obsessing over little details. Annie considers that perfectly understandable. It is certainly much more enjoyable than having to look at his frail, dumbass excuse for a crown prince every single day. After all, unlike Christopher's frail androgynous features, Max is a handsome, strong man, the very embodiment of a knight in shining armor. This makes Christopher shout that he would rather be engaged to the heroine than to Annie. Annie, meanwhile, thinks that Christopher must consider the useless lumps of fat she calls breasts attractive. Apparently, he would choose the heroine's slender and modest figure over her any day. She immediately shouts at him, pointing out that what he is saying is literally harassment. With that, she starts yelling at him about how much effort she has put into maintaining this figure. She has worked incredibly hard to stay in this shape, and Christopher has absolutely no right to mock her for it. Christopher, naturally, has absolutely no sympathy for her argument. He shouts back as if he even cares about all that, telling her to stop already. At this rate, someone might actually die from listening to her endless complaints. Just then, Max enters the room. He immediately notices that both Annie and Christopher are standing there, completely out of breath and huffing like they have just finished fighting for their lives. Annie looks toward Max and realizes that he has arrived. Max, meanwhile, looks at the two of them and seriously wonders why they have not simply gotten married already. Considering how often they are together, it seems like the obvious solution. Annie says that she has a dress fitting to attend, so she will be taking her leave. Christopher also says that he will see Max later before leaving. Max watches the two of them go and cannot help wondering about them. Those two are always together like this, so why are they not engaged yet? In the original game, Christopher and Annie would have already been engaged to each other by this point. Their relationship is supposed to progress naturally along that route. But this is not the game anymore. Their engagement has been completely derailed simply because two reincarnators have been meddling with the story far more than they have any right to. Of course, Max has absolutely no idea about any of that. Meanwhile, going back a few hours earlier, Melody approaches Max and asks if he is the person she thinks he is. Max looks at her and immediately recognizes her as Melody. She tells him that it has been a while. Max agrees that it really has been quite some time since they last met. He notices her academy uniform and realizes that her wish to become a maid has apparently come true. Melody happily confirms that it has. She also takes the opportunity to thank him once again for what he did for her back then. However, Max soon notices something else. The uniform Melody is wearing is normally worn by second-year students. That immediately makes him realize that if she is a student at this academy, then she must be a noble as well. Max quickly reassures her that they are friends, so there is no reason for her to worry about such trivial matters. Putting that aside, he becomes curious about something else. What exactly is a maid like her doing at the academy? Melody explains that she is currently working as a maid for House Luther Burke. She has come to the academy today because the young miss left something behind, and Melody is here to deliver it. The moment Max hears the name of the house, he becomes slightly reluctant. House Luther Burke is famous, or perhaps infamous, for its haunted mansion. The mansion in the capital is known for its deserted and poorly maintained appearance. It is practically devoid of taste, class, or anything else that noble families normally seem to care about. In fact, the Luther Burke residence is so famously gloomy that calling it a haunted mansion is probably the nicest thing anyone can say about it. Max remembers greeting the Count at his father's office, where his father serves as Prime Minister. From what Max can tell, the Count himself is not a bad person. Still, Max cannot help wondering whether anyone could really work under such living conditions. He looks at Melody and tells her that it must be difficult to suddenly start working for an aristocratic family. Because of that, he tells her that if she is ever in need of advice or assistance, she should feel free to approach him. Melody, however, quickly assures him that there is no need to worry. She is doing just fine. Everyone in the household has been incredibly kind to her and treats her like a member of the family. He thinks that he understands now and that there is nothing to worry about, which is good to hear. However, Melody suddenly grows a little quiet. Max immediately wonders if something is wrong. He briefly worries that it might be a case of workplace harassment, but Melody explains that the young miss has yet to find an escort for tonight's ball, even as they speak. She had been prepared to cross-dress herself and accompany her lady if necessary, but she is not certain that doing so would actually solve the problem. As Melody explains the situation with utmost seriousness, Max suddenly begins laughing. Melody looks at him in confusion and questions why he finds the matter amusing. To her, this is a genuine predicament and something of the utmost importance for her lady, so she wants him to understand just how serious the situation is. Max realizes that he cannot believe he had almost misunderstood her words. He explains that he is simply happy to see such an endearing relationship between the young miss and herself. Melody smiles at that and agrees that their relationship is indeed a close one. As an apology for laughing at her circumstances, Max then offers to take on the role of escort for the young miss for as long as she desires, provided Melody finds the arrangement agreeable. Melody reacts with visible gratitude, clearly delighted by his offer. Max finds himself thinking that perhaps this is not so bad after all. Max has been highly reputed as a pretty boy ever since he was young. Unfortunately, that very same trait has attracted many members of the opposite gender, causing them to pursue him and take advantage of him because of his appearance. As a result, he has gradually become rather averse to women. It is not to the point that he hates women. Rather, he simply prefers not to involve himself with them unless absolutely necessary. However, Melody is different. She does not care about his looks, nor does her attitude change after discovering that he is an aristocrat. She treats him naturally and maintains the same cordial relationship with him as before. It is a kind of relationship that Max does not despise. For a moment, he wonders whether this might be love. But almost immediately, he dismisses the thought. No, not quite. After all, helping a friend in need is simply a matter of course, is it not? Melody then gives him the address of the mansion and explains that they will also need to arrange a carriage. Max readily agrees, assuring her that the carriage can be arranged from his side. Melody then mentions that, if possible, she would love to introduce him to the young miss before the ball that evening. Max is more than willing to comply, but his work keeps him occupied until late afternoon. Melody accepts this without complaint and tells him that she will see him later. As their conversation comes to an end, Max finds himself wondering about the young lady whom Melody serves. He knows that she is the daughter of a count, but he cannot help wondering what sort of person she actually is. And now, back to the present. Max once again greets everyone politely as he stands before the mansion. He introduces himself as Max and explains that he is the person who will be escorting their daughter to the spring ball that evening. However, as he looks at the mansion standing before him, another thought immediately crosses his mind. He cannot understand which part of this house could possibly be considered frightening. How could anyone look at such a beautiful mansion and come to the conclusion that it is haunted? The place is far too magnificent for such a description. Max then turns his attention toward Luciana and greets her warmly, making it clear that he is pleased to meet her and that he looks forward to accompanying her tonight. Luciana responds that she also looks forward to spending the evening with him. Her nervousness is so obvious, however, that she even ends up biting her tongue while speaking. Max chuckles softly upon seeing this. He had never realized that there could be such a beautiful girl in this world. With that, he extends his hand toward her, inviting her to depart with him so that they can head to the ball together. Luciana smiles and accepts his offered hand, asking him to take good care of her throughout the evening. She then turns toward her mother and father and informs them that the two of them are leaving. Before departing, she also says goodbye to Melody, promising to see her later. Melody warmly wishes her a pleasant trip and hopes that she enjoys herself at the ball. The master and mistress of the mansion then prepare to leave as well. Melody wishes them a pleasant trip, but they insist that she should also go out and enjoy the party with her friends that evening. Melody hesitates because leaving the mansion unattended makes her somewhat uneasy. However, the Count points out that he has heard she has not missed a single day since she came to their household. Considering how faithfully she has worked, he would much rather see her go out and have some fun for once. They do, however, remind her not to stay out too late. Melody expresses her sincere gratitude for their consideration. She knows that she should get ready soon. With that, Melody changes out of her usual clothes and prepares herself for the evening. She has heard that they intend to have a formal dress fitted for her, but she cannot help wondering whether it is really all right for her to trouble them to such an extent. She feels as though she is already receiving far more consideration than she deserves. Suddenly, someone approaches her and apologizes for keeping her waiting. Melody turns around and assures the person that it is perfectly fine, explaining that she has only just arrived herself. She then asks whether they should get going. The two of them walk together toward another location. When they arrive, someone immediately steps forward to greet Melody, explaining that she has been waiting for her. It is Paula. Paula tells Melody that she needs to prepare herself. Melody can only stare at her in confusion, completely bewildered by what is happening and wondering what, exactly, she is supposed to prepare herself for. Melody can hardly believe what she is seeing. She wonders how she could have failed to notice this until now. How has she never realized that such an exemplary role model of a maid has been standing by her side all this time? Paula explains that her family used to specialize in women's cosmetics, which is why she possesses such remarkable skill when it comes to makeup and beauty. Melody is deeply impressed by her abilities, but she still wonders whether they truly need to go out dressed like this. Lexus explains that he came to her because the party he is attending requires him to have a partner. As far as he is concerned, they should be able to finish everything after doing the bare minimum of greetings. Paula, meanwhile, internally finds her good-for-nothing master incredibly annoying. She tells Melody that enough time has been wasted talking and that they should get her going already. Eventually, the two of them arrive, and Melody apologizes to Lexus for keeping him waiting. The moment Lexus looks at her, however, he completely freezes. He is momentarily unable to say anything as he stares at her transformed appearance. After recovering himself, he simply tells her that they should get going. He then turns toward Paula and informs her that they are leaving now. Paula watches the two of them depart with a knowing expression. Doing the bare minimum of greetings? Does Melody really believe that is all she will be doing tonight? The carriage soon arrives. Melody asks where exactly they are going, but when she follows Lexus's gaze, she notices that he is looking in the direction of the royal castle. She immediately becomes suspicious and wonders why they are going to the royal castle at all. Lexus explains that the small party they are attending is being held at the castle. He assumes that she already knows about the spring ball. Melody is stunned. The spring ball? What part of that is small? She nearly screams upon realizing what is happening. Isn't this the very same ball her lady will be attending? The exact same ball where Luciana will be making her social debut? Lexus admits that, regarding that particular detail, his boss coerced him into attending the event. Melody internally screams in disbelief. She has been tricked. Lexus apologizes, explaining that he could not find any female colleagues or friends who would have been more suitable for the role than her. Melody cannot believe what she is hearing. What kind of maid would participate in the very same ball where her own young miss is making her social debut? She apologizes, but she has no choice except to decline. Lexus responds by pointing out that Paula worked incredibly hard on her dress. She spent 3 full nights working on it consecutively, and it would be a terrible shame for Melody to miss the opportunity to shine after so much effort has been put into preparing her. Melody immediately feels guilty. To be honest, she can undoubtedly feel the love and effort Paula has poured into the dress simply from its quality alone. The craftsmanship is too impressive to ignore. With no other option, Melody finally gives in and agrees to attend the ball. However, she immediately points out another problem. If they simply walk into the ball together like this, the young miss will definitely notice her. Lexus questions whether that is really the case. After all, Paula has already applied makeup to Melody's face, and according to him, she looks like an entirely different person. Melody is astonished by how easily he has been fooled. She internally cries out that he is far too nice. Paula may be an expert when it comes to makeup, but even if her skills are enough to pull the wool over a man's eyes, the same cannot be said about Luciana's discerning gaze. Her lady will recognize her immediately. Melody insists that none of this would have been a problem if Lexus had simply been honest with her from the beginning and given her enough time to prepare properly. Lexus admits that he had a feeling that if he had told her the truth from the beginning, she would never have agreed to come. Melody knows that he is not wrong. She cannot even deny it. Lexus then apologizes for deceiving her, admitting that he had no choice but to take the rather roundabout approach. He also points out that it would be fairly easy for someone to notice her, considering that she naturally has both black hair and black eyes just like Luciana. The combination is particularly eye-catching. No amount of ordinary makeup would be enough to completely hide that resemblance. Melody considers the problem for a moment. If that is all she needs to do, then perhaps there is still a solution. She leans toward Lexus and decides that she will simply borrow his iris and hair color, effectively making herself resemble him instead. She uses rainbow dye to alter the colors of her hair and eyes, creating a completely different appearance. With her disguise finally prepared, there is little else left to do. The scene then cuts to the ballroom. Without further delay, the announcement is made that the year's spring ball is about to begin. The king addresses all of the assembled guests and encourages everyone to enjoy themselves to their heart's content on this special evening, warmly welcoming his fellow ladies and gentlemen. With the king's opening address, the spring ball finally commences. The gates of the grand venue open wide, welcoming the gathered nobles and their distinguished guests as they begin entering the magnificent ballroom. The long-awaited spring ball has officially begun. There are a total of 3 doors of different sizes through which the guests may enter. The largest door is reserved for royalty and nobles of marquis rank or higher. However, Freshmen making their formal debut at the spring ball are granted special permission to use that door as well. People murmur excitedly, saying that it is finally time to see the lady of the ball. For the counts and other nobles present, this may be the only day they ever get the chance to see such a young noblewoman make her grand entrance through those doors. They are both happy and nervous at the same time as they recall that the order of entrance is determined by the status of each family. The female partner's family status determines the order, with the first pair to enter being the daughter of a marquis. However, that is not who everyone is truly waiting to see. The real stars of this year's spring ball are Crown Prince Christopher and Lady Annie, who is being escorted by him. As soon as they appear, everyone begins to applaud. There is Crown Prince Christopher, bearing himself proudly in his formal royal attire. Yet standing beside him is Lady Annie, who looks even more beautiful in person. People cannot help but marvel at how someone only 15 years old can already possess such a mature and captivating figure. Some even feel foolish for allowing themselves to become jealous of her. That is why she is known as the Siren of the Kingdom. The title suits her perfectly. Her beauty is so extraordinary that no one would truly think of her as an actual siren capable of luring the entire kingdom toward its ruin. She is brilliant, intelligent, and dazzling, and everyone is already convinced that the future queen can be none other than her. The applause continues as Christopher quietly explains to Annie that the count-ranking pair from House Lutherberg will be entering last among the count-rank families. If they are going to follow the game plan as it was originally established, the person taking that position will most likely be someone entirely different, since the heroine never enrolled in the academy. Yet this is the world of Silver Saint and Five Orbs. Wouldn't things become even more problematic without the main heroine present? Christopher also wonders whether there is not supposed to be another major event happening later that very night. Annie, however, knows that they cannot tell for certain at this point. The ball has only just begun, and nobody knows how the events will unfold from here. Even so, she reminds Christopher not to let his guard down simply because the heroine is absent. With the main heroine nowhere to be seen, there is no telling what might happen. Then, at last, the next name is announced. From House Lutherberg, Lady Luciana is called forward. Luciana is extremely anxious as she steps toward the entrance. She wonders whether she is doing everything correctly. She has managed to pass Melody's tests regarding proper noble etiquette and dancing technique, but even with all that preparation, she still cannot help feeling nervous. Meanwhile, people begin to murmur among themselves. Some cannot believe that House Lutherberg has actually managed to prepare a dress suitable for the spring ball. They wonder how the family could have the nerve to appear here at all. After all, House Lutherberg holds the same count rank as them. In their eyes, if the family possesses even the slightest sense of pride and honor, they should never have participated in the first place. They pity the poor soul who has been assigned to escort Luciana, believing that he is wasting one of the few opportunities he will ever have to enter through the main door. Then the escort is finally announced. It is Lord Max. Annie is immediately shocked. Max has become someone's escort. He was supposed to come alone according to the game. He had already stated that he did not have any girls accompanying him, and he had even seemed irritated by the subject. Yet there he is, standing beside Luciana. Finally, Max and Luciana enter the hall together. The moment Luciana appears, everyone stares. The girl standing beside Max looks like a fairy princess. Her appearance is so striking that the entire atmosphere seems to change the instant she steps into the hall. Paula, however, cannot understand what is happening. She notices how quiet everyone has become and wonders where the applause is. She begins worrying that perhaps she has made some terrible mistake somewhere. On the other hand, Annie is practically in love at first sight. She has always wanted to meet a cute girl like Luciana, and now that she is finally seeing one in person, she cannot hide her excitement. Her attention immediately shifts toward Luciana, and she becomes fascinated by her appearance. Christopher, meanwhile, is absolutely furious. He cannot believe what Max has done. To him, Max is nothing short of a traitor. Worse yet, the girl beside him seems to be exactly the kind of person who would appeal to Max, making the situation even more unforgivable in Christopher's eyes. Once all the participants have entered the hall, the music is finally prepared to begin. As is customary for the first dance of the spring ball, the opening dance is a waltz. The king and queen are the first to take the floor and initiate the dance, setting the example for everyone else. After the royal couple begins, the remaining freshmen are expected to follow their lead. It is a rare tradition, and this dance marks the first of many opportunities for the freshmen to present themselves before high society. Annie and Christopher pair together, while Luciana and Max form the other prominent pair, and the crowd keeps its eyes glued to those two couples alone. Nobody even bothers to spare a glance at the other debutantes. It is as clear as day that, for them, their social debut has been an utter failure. The Prime Minister praises the Count for having such a wonderful daughter. He remarks that he has never once seen the Count's son agree to escort anyone, so he can only imagine the shock the Count must have felt when his son suddenly agrees to accompany his daughter. The Prime Minister muses that Christopher must be quite charmed by such a beauty, comparing her to a fairy from a storybook. The Count responds with humble gratitude, assuring the Prime Minister that he is simply being too kind. However, the Prime Minister insists that he is not exaggerating at all. In fact, he is more than pleased by what he is witnessing. With that, he continues to chatter enthusiastically. Luciana can no longer escape the attention of her friends. Her friends immediately ask her to explain what is going on, pointing out that, as her friends, they can only remain kept in the dark for so long. Luciana knows perfectly well that there is no way for her to evade the matter any longer. Suddenly, the Duke's daughter appears before Christopher and asks whether he would like to dance with her. Christopher responds with his usual extravagant charm, acting as though she is his most lovely lady and playfully wondering whether she might find it within her gracious heart to bestow upon this humble man the sweetest present of all, a dance with her. Christopher knows that, no matter how much he might wish to avoid it, he cannot escape this situation either. A countess also appears before Annie and asks whether she might have the honor of sharing a dance with her. Annie considers it a most wonderful proposal and graciously accepts, placing herself in the countess's care. She finds herself looking forward to what may become one of the most unforgettable moments of the evening. She, too, realizes that there is no escaping the attention being directed toward her. As the first waltz reaches its conclusion, the rest of the guests begin to join the dance alongside the freshmen. For a prolonged event such as this, it is not at all unusual for latecomers to arrive. Amid the growing movement of the ballroom, someone notices that Melody's father appears to be waiting for someone. The Prime Minister notices his unusual behavior and asks whether something is wrong. Melody's father explains that nothing is wrong, but he cannot help noticing that Lexus is unusually late. The Prime Minister recalls that he has ordered Lexus to be present for the event and jokes that he has essentially offered him up as his sacrifice. Melody's father finds himself thinking that, if his daughter were here, she would probably be chatting away with all the girls her age by now, would she not? The thought makes his heart ache. He wonders whether he will ever be able to see her again. Standing there without her, he realizes just how lonely he feels. More than anything, he wishes that he could see his daughter once again. The Prime Minister then observes that it seems to be about time for Lexus to finally arrive. And then she appears, with her locks of golden hair glistening beneath the lights like precious jewels, and dressed in a gown of pure white, completely devoid of even the slightest stain. She walks into the ballroom with a manner so graceful and mysterious that everyone is immediately captivated. The sight of her leaves the entire room stunned, as though the guests have forgotten how to breathe. Unlike Lady Annie, whose beauty carries a mature allure, or Lady Luciana, whose charm possesses the freshness of youth, this girl has something entirely different about her. Even though no one utters a single word, the collective thoughts of everyone present reach the exact same conclusion. An angel has descended. The Prime Minister remarks upon the arrival of yet another beautiful lady. Meanwhile, Melody's father finds himself staring at the newcomer, wondering whether this could possibly be his daughter. But he immediately tells himself that it cannot be. The girl standing before him has completely different hair and eye colors. Her appearance is nothing like the daughter he remembers. And yet, despite every logical reason telling him otherwise, he simply cannot shake the strange feeling growing within his heart. Something about her feels familiar. Lexus apologizes to everyone for being late. Rather than reprimanding him, the people around him insist that his lateness is completely justified, considering the circumstances. They are far more interested in the beautiful woman accompanying him, and they begin wondering whether he intends to introduce them to his esteemed partner. Melody greets everyone warmly and introduces herself under her new name, Cecilia. She expresses her gratitude for being invited to the evening and thanks the host for having her there tonight. The moment Melody's father hears the name Cecilia, his thoughts immediately become overwhelmed. What a terribly cruel twist of fate. Cecilia is the very name he has reserved for his daughter, the name he has always intended to give her when she finally returns to him. The realization strikes him with an almost unbearable force. Meanwhile, Beatrice draws Luciana's attention toward the newcomer, pointing out that another beautiful lady has arrived. The two of them cannot help but wonder what is happening with this year's spring ball. At this rate, It seems as though all the other debutantes are going to become little more than decorations in the background. But Luciana already knows the truth. No matter how many times she looks at the newcomer, no matter how completely different the girl appears to be, Luciana knows that this is simply Melody. Her gaze then shifts toward Melody's father. Luciana cannot understand why he is not saying anything. Why is he simply standing there and staring at her without doing anything? Meanwhile, poor Melody has no idea what is happening inside his mind. From where she stands, she can only feel the intense gaze directed at her. The young miss seems to be staring daggers at her, and Melody cannot help but wonder whether she has already been recognized. Could it be that she has already noticed who she really is? All the ladies murmur among themselves, wondering what they have here and admiring how lovely the newcomer is. They already know that Sir Lectius will be attending the ball, but they had no idea that he would be bringing such an unassuming escort along with him as well. They cannot help but find her adorable, wondering why he did not introduce such a cute young lady to them sooner. Lectius explains that the two of them have only met recently. She is not a noble, which means that this is her first time attending an event of this nature. The implication behind his words is obvious. This will most likely be her first and final attendance, since there is no way he can bring her again next time. One of the ladies points out that, for Sir Lectius, who has never been willing to escort a lady before, bringing along a partner whom he has only recently met is quite remarkable. So that is how things are, after all. The ladies then turn their attention toward Christiana, wondering what on earth they are supposed to do about such a situation. What a delightful little conundrum this is. If they want to secure her attendance at the next ball, she will need to acquire a title befitting a noblewoman. And what could be more suitable than becoming the wife of a knight? That would be absolutely perfect. Lectius immediately becomes nervous. This is precisely why he has never wanted to bring a partner to a ball before. Christiana is the sister of Count Regenbar's and Melody's aunt. The other noblewoman among them is the wife of the Prime Minister and Maxwell's mother. Christiana playfully suggests that, ever since Lectius first laid eyes upon Melody, he must have already wanted her to be his partner. Lectius immediately becomes flustered and blushes as he denies that this is the case, but the ladies refuse to let him off so easily. They continue teasing him, suggesting that the two of them have continued meeting day after day, and that, somewhere along the way, the seeds of love have finally begun to sprout. They find the entire situation incredibly romantic. They admit that they have seriously underestimated him. Lectius, meanwhile, notices that Melody appears to be practically beaming. Despite all the teasing being directed at her, she seems completely unfazed, smiling as though none of their words could possibly trouble her. He cannot help but admire how remarkably thick-skinned she seems to be. At this point, however, Lectius fails to realize that beneath Melody's bright and smiling facade, she is actually on the verge of panicking. The reason has nothing to do with the noble ladies teasing her. It is because of the young lady standing behind them. She is looking this way. No, she is not merely looking, she is staring. Melody feels her heart tighten with anxiety. There is no way she could already have recognized her, is there? Even the mistress standing directly in front of her has failed to notice who she really is. Then Luciana's mother suggests that, since all the girls are around the same age, perhaps Melody should be introduced to her daughter. Melody immediately realizes that this development is absolutely unacceptable. No, they cannot let this happen. She has to get out of here, somewhere, anywhere. She needs to escape immediately. So, without giving herself any more time to think, Melody rushes over to Sir Lectius and grabs hold of his shirt. She asks him for a dance, hoping that he will take her away from the situation before things become even more dangerous. The sudden action leaves Lectius completely stunned. His face turns bright red. Even though Melody is only doing this as a means of escape, Lectius cannot help but become incredibly flustered by the fact that she is holding onto his shirt and asking him to dance with her. Melody's actions, however, are a clear violation of noble etiquette. Not only has she interrupted a conversation involving several high-ranking nobles, but as a lady, she is supposed to wait for a gentleman to invite her to dance. She should never be the one to initiate the dance herself. Yet the ladies do not seem offended in the slightest. Instead, they find the entire thing absolutely adorable. They marvel at what a cute and bold little thing she is, and even they become slightly flustered by her unexpected display of courage. Lady Mariana then remarks that she used to do things like this as well. The other noble ladies immediately become curious and wonder whether she means that she used to invite her husband out to dance in precisely this manner. Mariana confirms that she did. If they left her husband alone, she explains, he he would simply spend the entire night talking with his male friends. The other noble ladies exchange amused looks. Could it be that they have stumbled upon a gold mine? Lady Christiana finds herself thinking the same thing. Perhaps they really have overlooked a precious jewel all this time. And yet, the treasure chest has been sitting right beside them from the very beginning. Meanwhile, Luciana is literally pissed as hell, thinking that just now, plain as day, Melody is running away from her. Her friends notice her frowning and ask why she looks so displeased, but Luciana simply replies that it is nothing. Beatrice, speaking of the matter, wonders whether Luciana will be doing that later as well. If she has no one to dance with, Beatrice suggests that they could go together. Luciana questions what exactly she means by that, and Beatrice explains that, if Luciana does not already know, this is an interesting segment. The thought clearly intrigues her, and she decides that she is completely in for it. With that, Beatrice calls out to Max. As mentioned earlier, the proper etiquette at the ball is for the ladies to wait for the gentlemen to invite them to dance. Yet Luciana immediately approaches Max and asks him to dance with her. Everyone around them is surprised by her boldness, but no one can bring themselves to point out her breach of etiquette. At this moment, her sheer cuteness completely overwhelms any concern about proper manners. Max asks her to wait for a moment, while her friends can only think that there she goes again. One of her friends then asks Beatrice whether she wants to join them later, but Beatrice says that she thinks she will pass. Luciana seems to be up to something, after all, and Beatrice wants to see what she has cooked up for them. Luciana, meanwhile, has something else entirely in mind. On the other hand, Melody thinks that she has finally managed to get out of the young Mrs. side. She figures that she can have a quick dance and then sneak back home under the cover of the crowd. With that in mind, she turns her attention toward Alexius. Melody notices that Alexius's body is a little tense and wonders whether he might be nervous by chance. Alexius cannot help it. How could anyone possibly remain calm when the girl they like asks them to dance? The phrase "the girl he likes" strikes Alexius all at once. He begins to wonder whether he is actually in love with the girl standing before him. Before he can dwell on the thought for too long, Melody wonders whether the real problem is that he does not know how to dance. She reassures him that it is perfectly fine and tells him not to worry. He only needs to know some of the basic footwork, and then he can begin enjoying the dance as well. After all, she would know, since she is the one who taught her lady how to dance. Alexius realizes that there is no longer any doubt. He is in love with her. Melody soon notices how naturally he is moving and thinks that he is quite the dancer. Alexius, meanwhile, realizes that this is actually starting to become fun. The two of them continue dancing together as Melody considers which move they should try next. She figures that another move should be perfectly fine as well. Everything is simply wonderful. Melody moves with such grace that she looks like an angel spreading her wings. Everyone watching begins applauding, marveling at what a gorgeous dance it truly is. Whether it is the angel or the fairy princess, both of their dances are the embodiment of beauty. Elsewhere, Annie complains that there are far too many guys asking her for a dance. She blames all of them for the fact that she has not been able to properly talk to Luciana. Christopher tells her not to take it out on him, pointing out that he has not been able to invite Luciana for a dance either. Still, how can he possibly say no when girls are willing to dance with him? That only makes Annie think that Christopher is such a creep. She figures that this might be the end for him, but at least she still has something to look forward to. On the other hand, Melody finishes her dance with Alexius and thanks him for it. Alexius insists that the pleasure is entirely his. Melody notices that he is smiling for once. Seeing that smile, she decides that this is the perfect time for her to make her leave. She figures that she should probably go now. But suddenly, an announcement rings throughout the ballroom. The distinguished guests are informed that if they have been enjoying the ball so far, the next piece is going to spice things up. Everyone immediately realizes what is about to begin. They are right. It is the annual spring ball tradition that is starting now. A same-gender couple dance. Melody is caught off guard when Luciana immediately appears from behind her. Luciana asks Melody to come and dance with her. On the other hand, Christopher wonders what this is all about. A same-gender couple dance? That is the event that can affect the outcome of the story depending on who they choose to dance with in the game, right? Annie explains that if he dances with the friends he met during the ceremony, he will level up his friendship with them, which will encourage them to help him more frequently later on. And if he dances with the villainess, he can lower the difficulty of the game in the future by decreasing his stats. Depending on his playstyle, he can choose the partner who best suits his interests in the event. And the pairings between the guys here are of particular interest to Fujoshis and the greater yaoi fandom. Annie points out that Christopher and Max, in particular, have been the fan favorite ship by a long shot. Christopher immediately shouts that he absolutely does not want to do this. The joy and festivities of the ball will cease the moment the dance ends. After that, it will be that event. They should have been more prepared. But the heroine is not here. The one person who can resolve the issue is not here. They cannot deny the possibility of casualties or even fatalities. They cannot let their guard down for even a single moment. Christopher then calls out to Annie, wondering whether she is not ready to go already. Annie says that of course she is. She has been looking forward to this moment. She is going to dance with the cute Luciana. Only 2 minutes later, however, the two of them realize that they have gotten the timetable completely wrong. The same-gender couple dance has already begun. The same-gender couple dance takes place with the purpose of introducing the freshmen of the Royal Academy into high society while helping them establish and strengthen relationships with one another. This segment has been a mainstay of the annual spring ball for years, during which everyone's attention is turned toward the young ladies participating in the dance. Both Luciana and Melody dance remarkably well. Luciana's friends think that the two are so skillful that their movements appear completely natural, almost as though they are perfectly in sync with one another. That is hardly surprising, of course, considering that they have spent days training for the ball. The two have practiced tirelessly, albeit with their roles reversed during their rehearsals. Returning to the matter at hand, Melody realizes that this is the first time the young miss is dancing as the lead. She has only given Luciana pointers for this particular role yesterday. Until now, Melody has always taken the lead so that the young miss would not make any mistakes while playing the role of the follower. Even here, however, the young miss understands how to take the lead when assuming the male role during the dance. She is able to properly put into practice everything Melody has taught her, having carefully observed her instruction. Melody cannot help but notice how happy Luciana seems to be. For a moment, she remembers how she had been certain that she was completely doomed back then. Luciana, meanwhile, is simply happy to think that, well, whatever happens, she does not really mind anymore. For now, the two of them should simply continue dancing. Melody also realizes that the two of them are dancing exceptionally well, and she finds the whole experience incredibly enjoyable. Dancing with the young miss feels almost like playing with the wind, so light and effortless are Luciana's movements. Everyone around them begins staring at the pair and notices that the entire dance floor appears to be sparkling. The spectators begin wondering where all this light has come from. Luciana, however, suddenly realizes that something is wrong. She wonders what Melody has even done. Melody is still physically present beside her, but her mind is practically absorbed in the magic surrounding them. In her imagination, she frantically wonders what the two of them are supposed to do now. From what she can see, the people around them do not seem to have realized that this strange phenomenon is caused by her, which means that they may still be able to fix the situation. Despite the circumstances, Melody is still having an incredible amount of fun. Luciana decides that if getting Melody to return to reality is what needs to be done, then she has no choice but to resort to drastic measures. She deliberately steps on Melody's foot while dancing, hoping that the sudden pain will bring her back to her senses. Melody immediately cries out in pain and wonders why Luciana would do such a thing. She knows perfectly well that deliberately stepping on one's partner's feet during a dance is extremely rude, and she is certain that Luciana has done it on purpose. Luciana, however, considers that matter unimportant compared to what is happening around them. She urges Melody to look around and see what she herself is doing. Melody looks around as well and wonders where this strange light has even come from. The entire area is filled with sparkling radiance, leaving both of them bewildered by the spectacle. Luciana is left wondering what exactly is happening. Whatever the cause, she knows that she needs to fix it, and she needs to do so quickly. She realizes that the light must be the result of her magic leaking out because of her excessive excitement. The solution is obvious. She simply needs to suppress her magic before the situation becomes even more conspicuous. Luciana focuses on controlling herself and commands the light to disappear. With that, all of the radiant light surrounding them gradually fades away. Everyone begins applauding, praising the performance as absolutely breathtaking and marveling at what an amazing dance duo Luciana and Melody make. Even Max finds himself impressed by the two of them, thinking that they are truly an incredible dance pair. Lexus agrees that Max is quite right. Suddenly, the Count calls out to Lectius and asks whether he is not supposed to be with Miss Cecilia. Lectius explains that they were separated during the same gender dance just now and asks whether the Count has happened to see her anywhere. As he speaks, Lectius notices that the Count is holding a picture of his lover, Melody's mother. The Count finds the situation rather strange. He admits that he does not know why, but seeing Miss Cecilia somehow reminds him of his daughter. However, their eye colors do not match, so even he realizes that it is a rather strange thing to say. Lectius politely says that he will continue searching for her outside, sir. Later, Lectius reasons that Luciana has most likely dragged Melody outside so that she can question her. If that is indeed the case, then the two of them should be somewhere with relatively few people around. That thought reminds him that he and Melody first met while he was searching for Lady Celeste's whereabouts in the Marguerite of Evernation. Could these feelings really be for the girl who had been lost with that song from so long ago? Melody is a few years older this year. No, they do not actually know whether her birthday has already passed, which means that she is 14. Could he really become involved with a girl who is 7 years younger than him? In the face of such an age gap, Lectius does not have the confidence to define their relationship as that of lovers. Even though the amount of time they have spent together has been short, there is one thing about Melody that he can be absolutely certain of. Her mind is filled with matters concerning maid work. Her first priority in life is unquestionably being a maid. Her second priority is also being a maid. Her third, fourth, and even fifth priorities are undeniably all related to being a maid as well. Normally, a maid would have to leave her position once she becomes married, and Lectius simply cannot imagine a future in which Melody would willingly accept such a proposal. With those thoughts in mind, he notices that Luciana and Melody are sitting together. The two of them seem to be as close as ever, and seeing that makes Lectius genuinely glad. Then he notices Luciana glaring directly at him. She makes it perfectly clear that Lectius certainly seems to have had quite an enjoyable time dancing with Melody, but if he lies to her one more time, she will never forgive him. Lectius understands the warning immediately. Lady Luciana is, admittedly, a little terrifying. Still, he cannot help but be amazed by the fact that she was able to identify Melody with a single glance. Not even the Lutherberg couple had been able to tell. Could it really be that they had failed to recognize that the lady standing before them was the very same black-haired, black-eyed maid they knew? Lectius begins to wonder whether that is truly the case. But then another question occurs to him. Was the girl really born with black hair and black eyes when he first met her at Grandiva's in the Marguerite of Evernation? She already had black hair and black eyes at the time. When they met again in the capital, it was during her visit to the waiting room where Lectius had been napping. But was that really the moment he remembered? Lectius searches his memories, wondering where exactly he has seen her before. Then he remembers. It was through Celeste when Melody mentioned that the moon was out. The moonlight had fallen over the golden hair she was using as a disguise, revealing something that had caught his attention. A strand of silver hair. Lectius knows that Count Regenbars is in love with Serena, and that Serena later gives birth to his daughter, Celeste. He knows that Celeste inherits her father's silver hair and her mother's lapis lazuli-colored eyes. He also knows what Serena looks like from the portrait that belongs to Count Regenbars. There is another detail that Lectius cannot ignore. The time when Melody Wave leaves the Margrave of Evernation coincides with the exact period when Celeste disappears, and Melody possesses special magic that allows her to alter both her hair color and her eye color. The blonde hair she is currently displaying is not her true hair color. That day is when Lectius finally realizes the truth. That's right. The day he met her again in the royal capital was not actually in the waiting room. It was in the bathhouse. There is no denying it now. The Melody he saw that day had silver hair and lapis lazuli eyes. At the time, Lectius did not think twice about it because she did not match the initial physical description he had been given of Lady Celeste. But now that he looks back on everything, he realizes that there are far too many similarities between Lady Celeste and Melody for him to dismiss them as mere coincidence. Both of them become active around the same time following Lady Serena's passing. Both come from the same Margrave. Both possess silver hair and lapis lazuli eyes. Melody fits Lady Celeste's description and circumstances so perfectly that it is almost impossible to believe that she could be anyone else. The more Lectius considers everything he knows, the more certain he becomes. She could be the one. No, she could be no one else but her. Count Regenbars. They have finally found her. Melody is Lady Celeste. His feelings for her are beside the point. Lady Celeste's greatest desire is to continue working as a maid. But if he informs the Count of the truth, her desire to remain a maid will no longer be possible. Yet, if he keeps the truth from the Count, he can never forgive himself for deliberately prolonging her suffering. There is simply no way for him to choose. No matter how hard he racks his brain over the matter, he cannot imagine a future in which they can both be happy. Had he known that discovering the truth would lead him this torn, he would gladly have stopped himself from finding out in the first place. Not long ago, Luciana asks Melody whether she is certain that she is no longer angry with that man. Melody assures her that she is fine and figures that he probably apologized to her on their way there. Luciana then thinks that, if Melody is truly fine with it, she supposes she still wants to smack the heck out of him together with Harrison. Melody realizes that was incredibly close. Dancing with her had been a lot of fun, but she still cannot bring herself to stop being angry with the man who tricked her. He did not even have the courage to formally invite her. Luciana thinks that he is severely mistaken if he believes he can simply play around with her Melody. She then asks Melody to confirm that the man is merely a friend, right? Melody replies that yes, he is a good friend. Luciana immediately realizes that the feelings are completely one-sided. Melody regards him purely as a friend. Still, the two of them appear to be on good terms. Melody then brings up the subject of friends and mentions that she has recently befriended Paula as well. Paula is a maid just like her and is currently working for Sir Lectrius at his residence. Yet, despite being a fellow all-purpose maid, Paula is also remarkably skilled as a makeup artist. Melody decides that she must find an opportunity for Paula to teach her everything she knows about makeup. Hearing this, Luciana thinks that the man never stood a chance. She never wanted to help him in the first place, but seeing just how hopeless his situation is makes her pity him. Melody then apologizes for becoming so engrossed in their conversation. Luciana assures her that there is nothing to worry about and thinks that they should start making their way back as well. As they begin moving, Melody notices that Luciana's dress has become disheveled, so she offers to adjust it for her. Luciana thanks her while Melody thinks that, while she is fixing the dress, she can also check its magical enhancements. Luciana remembers that Melody had mentioned applying a protection spell or two to her. Melody confirms that this is indeed the case and assures her that, with those spells in place, there is nothing for her to worry about, but then, Melody suddenly senses something strange. She wonders whether it is merely her imagination. She is certain, however, that someone has been staring at them. Because of that, Melody suggests that she might as well apply another spell to protect Luciana. Luciana agrees, saying that she does not mind. Melody uses the artificial sensitive skin spell on her. When Luciana asks what the spell is supposed to do, Melody explains that it sharpens her senses. She has modified the spell so that it reacts to any lingering stares or hostile intent directed toward her. When Luciana enters the ballroom, she apologizes to Max for keeping him waiting for so long. He assures her that it is quite all right before asking whether they should continue. He would like to introduce her to some of his friends. Max then looks around and wonders whether Miss Angel is not accompanying her. Luciana realizes that he must be referring to Miss Cecilia and explains that she has already returned. Max remarks that it is a shame. Luciana immediately pouts, pointing out that he is saying that even though she is standing right here. This makes Max chuckle. Luciana questions whether he is actually laughing at her right now. After all, she is the one who first left her partner standing there while she went looking for Melody. And now he has the nerve to make fun of her for it. Max then suggests that they finally make their way. When Luciana places her hand in Max's, the spell Melody applied to her pendant suddenly reacts. Luciana wonders whether this means that, whenever someone directs a malicious gaze toward her, she can be notified immediately. In addition, a light that only she can see appears over the person directing that stare at her. Melody had also instructed her that whenever she sees one of these lights, she should keep her distance from the person. Luciana notices that the person in question is an old, annoying man. She immediately thinks that he is incredibly creepy. Max, meanwhile, is impressed by how perceptive Luciana's intuition is. Luciana notices that the light remains visible. She can clearly and accurately sense the hostility being directed toward her. Lady Luciana has very limited experience with high society, so it would not be strange for her to be slow to recognize the malicious intentions of those around her. That is precisely why Max has been looking out for her and shielding her from such prying eyes. Yet, to think that she has already managed to pinpoint those people so precisely and is actively taking measures to avoid them is astonishing. Her ability to quickly distinguish friend from foe is an exceptionally rare trait. Someone with such instincts would make an excellent wife for any member of the high nobility. Then Max suddenly catches himself. He wonders what the hell he is even thinking. Meanwhile, Luciana senses a certain degree of envy coming from one of the young ladies, but she cannot understand why someone as beautiful as that girl would possibly be jealous of her. Max explains that the young lady is the daughter of Duke Rangdal. He then identifies the unpleasant man from earlier as Count Jaishuan of the Ministry of Finance. Even outside the ministry, the man is infamously known for lashing out at his maids. As for the lady of that household, Max explains that she is probably upset because Luciana has relentlessly stolen her thunder. Luciana wonders what he means by having stolen her thunder. Max realizes that she still has not noticed it. The main stars of tonight's ball are undoubtedly His Highness the Prince and Lady Victoriam. Normally, the second most eye-catching person should be Lady Rangdal, the daughter of Duke Rangdal, whose family ranks just below the Marquis. However, if they were to judge solely by the amount of attention each person has received, the situation is completely different. The person who has received the most attention, been praised as the fairy princess, and even danced with the angel is none other than Luciana. As a result, Lady Rangdal has received barely any attention at all. Luciana should now begin to understand why the young lady is so frustrated, especially on the night of her social debut. And with school starting tomorrow, the situation is going to be a disaster. Everyone will be scrutinizing the fairy princess's every action, no matter how big or small. On top of that, Luciana wonders whether this is not the complete opposite of what it means to be a Lutheroke. Max tells her not to look down and assures her that she has nothing to worry about. He will introduce her to a few of his friends, and they will be more than happy to help her. She wonders if these are Lord Max's friends. Just then, someone calls out to Max, informing him that they have finally found him and that someone is waiting for him. The first of them steps forward and introduces himself, expressing how pleased he is to meet Lady Luciana for the first time. He identifies himself as Sir Mary Victoriam and remarks that it is a pleasure to meet the fairy princess in person. Christopher also introduces himself, explaining that he is currently the crown prince of the country. Luciana immediately responds that it is an honor to be in their presence. The two of them assure her that there is no need for her to be so anxious around them, as they are far more down to earth than she might expect. Annie remarks that, really, she does not think she has ever presented herself as being particularly high and mighty. Speaking of which, Annie asks Luciana about the angel she was dancing with during the same-gender couple dance. Luciana begins to explain that she was dancing with someone, almost revealing Melody's name, but immediately corrects herself and says that she means Miss Cecilia. The moment she mentions Cecilia, the two of them immediately become excited. They eagerly ask where Miss Cecilia is right now, what she looks like, where she was born, and what her family name is. Max tells the two of them to calm down and stop overwhelming Luciana with questions. Luciana explains that Miss Cecilia has already returned home. She also tells them that Cecilia has blonde hair. The revelation makes the two of them wonder if Cecilia truly has golden hair. Their excitement suddenly drops, and Luciana asks if something is the matter. They apologize and assure her that it is nothing, explaining that they are simply very curious about Cecilia. Annie, however, begins to think deeply. For Cecilia to have appeared here, could she actually be the heroine? Yet the heroine is supposed to have silver hair, while Cecilia has golden hair. Her partner is also rumored to be Sir Lectria's, exactly as the script describes. However, Cecilia is not Count Regenbar's daughter. Annie cannot help but wonder what all of this means. If Cecilia is not the person she is supposed to be, then what is her true identity? Luciana thanks them sincerely for taking care of her that evening. Annie tells Luciana that they should continue getting along well with each other at school, as well. As Max looks at the three of them together, he begins to think that perhaps he should retake his first year all over again. Christopher remarks that there should be no problem with that, as long as the Prime Minister agrees to it. Christopher then takes Luciana's hand and gently kisses it, thanking her for coming to the ball that evening. On the other hand, Annie cannot stop thinking about the fact that, even after everything that has happened, he still has not shown up tonight. This is supposed to be the major incident that occurs during the spring ball. The assault on the ball is an important event in the original script. If everything were proceeding according to the story, the assassin should have already broken in through that window. Yet there is not even the slightest hint that anything like that is about to happen. After this, they may have to return to the drawing board and completely rethink their plans for the future. As she continues thinking, Annie suddenly realizes something else. Christopher has been holding Luciana's hand for quite a while now. Surely, he has held it long enough and needs to let her go. He has already frightened her enough as it is. But then Annie notices that Luciana's expression has suddenly darkened. Luciana senses something strange. Melody's spell is reacting intensely, warning her that something is approaching. Whatever it is coming from above. She begins to suspect that the delicate aura surrounding her has been mistaken for the target. Perhaps the attacker is not actually aiming for her this time. Luciana immediately warns Christopher to look out. Without hesitation, she forces Christopher to fall back, just as the assassin descends upon them. Everyone cries out in alarm and calls for Luciana. They soon realize that the assassin is standing directly in front of them, while Luciana has fallen to the ground. Annie can only stare in horror, wondering how she could have allowed this to happen. The assault on the ball has begun. This is an event caused by an unfortunate soul who has been robbed of his reason, a man who has been manipulated and controlled by the Demon King. His name is Buki Keshel, and this is his assault. The despair begins. Little Red Riding Hood. One day, the mistress requests Little Red Riding Hood's assistance with a small errand. The mistress asks whether she could trouble her to deliver a gift to Mrs. XS, who lives on the outskirts. The annoying no, actually, the idiot maid immediately agrees and accepts the task. Little Red Riding Hood thinks that if she is going to the outskirts, she might as well take the opportunity to visit the forest. The game they caught there the other day had been absolutely delectable. She wonders if she might be able to catch some meat again today. As luck would have it, she manages to catch one and decides to prepare some food with it. The mistress's daughter looks at the meal and asks the idiot maid if they are having bear meat for dinner today. Judging from its appearance alone, it looks absolutely delicious. For Little Red Riding Hood, it is simply another peaceful day working as a maid. At the Lutherbird mansion, Melody thinks they are returning much later than she expected. She realizes that she needs to start preparing properly so she can receive the family the moment they return. Lectias has also been acting strangely on their way back, and Melody cannot help but wonder if everything is all right. She decides to clean the room once more so that they can enjoy a comfortable night's rest as soon as they arrive. In case they are hungry, she plans to prepare some snacks and wine as well. Looking at the time, Melody figures they should be back soon. She might as well brew some tea while she waits. As she takes out the necessary things, she notices that the young Mrs. Teacup is about to fall. The scene suddenly cuts to Luciana, who lies unconscious. Nearby, the guards are ordered to attack the assassin, but their efforts prove completely useless. No matter how many times they strike, they cannot break through the barrier surrounding him. The Magister calls out to Seven, and Seven begins casting his greatest magic. The spell surges forward with tremendous force, yet even that proves incapable of breaking through the barrier. The assassin seems almost amused by their efforts. He wonders if that is truly supposed to be the most powerful magic the greatest magician in the kingdom has to offer. He questions whether they are finally finished playing games. After all, this is the Demon King's barrier. He considers himself fortunate that both Annie and Max are with him. However, Luciana is there as well, critically injured and barely conscious, or, rather, completely unconscious at this point. The story then turns to Buki. Buki is once a slave who grows up in a secluded village inhabited by magicians who deliberately hide themselves from the outside world. Unfortunately, their peaceful isolation does not last forever. The village is eventually discovered, and the magicians are hunted for sport by soldiers from a neighboring empire. Buki is only 10 years old when the slaughter begins. Both of his parents die while resisting the onslaught, while Buki survives only to be sold into slavery because of the extraordinary affinity for magic he has displayed from a young age. His life as a slave is anything but merciful. He is forced to act as a human shield on the front lines for a mercenary group, constantly thrown into danger whenever someone else needs protection. Day after day, he is subjected to both physical and verbal abuse. His existence becomes a seemingly endless cycle of pain, humiliation, and struggle. Yet the time for change finally comes when Buki turns 18. Determined to make a name for himself in the kingdom of Theolas, his master ventures into the largest and most dangerous demonized zone in the land, the Great Forest of Wiener Grand. The expedition consists of no more than 10 other mercenaries. With Buki's magic helping them move through the forest unnoticed, the group manages to enter the terrifying wilderness without attracting attention. But then something goes terribly wrong. Everyone except Buki and his master dies. The question naturally arises of how all those people could possibly have died so suddenly. The answer is Buki. His master survives only because of Buki's magical prowess. The entire expedition has been Buki's possession from the very beginning. Unable to attack his master directly because of the enslavement magic binding him, Buki instead chooses a more satisfying method of revenge. He deliberately lures his master into the cruelest and most savage depths of the forest, where the land itself seems eager to devour anyone foolish enough to enter. It is the perfect place to turn years of resentment into something far more dangerous. Buki's master eventually wonders where they are supposed to go next and what in the world Buki thinks he is doing. But Buki is no longer following his master's orders. He is following the voice of someone else. A mysterious voice calls out to him, addressing him as a tormented sorcerer. It promises him power and offers him a path beyond the miserable existence he has endured. His limbs, his mind, and his blade are all offered to this mysterious presence. And that is the moment everything changes. Buki becomes a vessel for the Demon King. Now, he has his sights set on those who possess royal blood, the people capable of fully unsealing the Demon King. Or, at least, that is how the story goes. And considering the situation unfolding before them, it seems the story is becoming far too real for anyone's liking. Even the core magician's magic proves incapable of doing anything against the barrier. Christopher urges everyone not to stop attacking it, no matter how little damage they manage to inflict. Even the smallest disturbance could distract the assassin, and if they can create an opening, Christopher plans to use it to defeat him. He then calls out to Annie, questioning how long she intends to stand around. He wonders whether she has suddenly developed a death wish or something. Annie quickly makes it clear that she certainly does not. Christopher then turns his attention to Max. Since Max is unarmed, Christopher warns him that approaching the enemy directly would be too dangerous. Instead, he orders Max to support them from the rear with his magic. The assassin remains completely unfazed. He declares their efforts futile, insisting that even if they are armed, their attacks are meaningless against him. Christopher admits that it certainly seems that way, but he warns the assassin not to underestimate them. The group then uses the limited transfer spell. The assassin is immediately intrigued by the strange sorcery and wonders what kind of magic they are attempting to use. Christopher refuses to explain, essentially making it clear that they are obviously not going to reveal their plans to the enemy in the middle of a battle. There is a reason the assassin is not worried at all. Only a saint can defeat the Demon King. However, the game provides one particular weakness that non-saints can exploit. The Demon King is vulnerable to weapons made of silver. The assassin questions what they could possibly hope to accomplish with such a tiny dagger. Christopher simply reminds him that he has already told him not to underestimate them. He then commands all of creation to heed his will. Using alchemy, he activates the next part of his plan, transmutation. Christopher also orders Annie to go and treat Luciana while telling Max to continue supporting him. The assassin finds the situation increasingly interesting. He remarks that this is quite entertaining and that there is still plenty of time for him to dissect every word and action they make. Meanwhile, Annie is completely stunned. She cannot believe what she is witnessing. She is so shocked that, for a moment, she stops thinking altogether. Then she sees Luciana. Annie immediately tells her to wait for her and promises that she will treat her using healing magic. The Annie from the original game is a character who is not only arrogant but also incompetent in almost every possible way. Her sole purpose is essentially to serve as a plot device, pushing the heroine and the love interest closer together. During the assault in the game, Annie is only capable of crying helplessly in a corner. To make matters worse, she is one of those rare villainesses who manages to be both spectacularly stupid and completely incapable of reading the room. Somehow, she always seems to find the worst possible moment to make the worst possible decision. However, her entire life changes when Anna is reincarnated into Annie's body with the goal of eventually confronting the Demon King. From that point onward, she spends every day studying and searching for ways to strengthen the kingdom. Although she is merely average in almost every area, she refuses to let that stop her. Instead, she dedicates herself to rigorous training, constantly working to improve the abilities she lacks. Both limited transfer and transmutation are unique spells developed by her. Even with the knowledge and imagination of a modern-day Japanese person, Anna cannot simply invent extraordinary magic overnight. She is forced to develop her own spells through tireless research, experimentation, and an almost unreasonable amount of studying. And that effort eventually produces results. There is another problem, however. In this world, healing magic capable of promoting the rapid recovery of injuries and illnesses has yet to exist. The saint's power can carry healing properties of its own, but those abilities can only be discovered during the latter half of the story. Before they can be found, however, major conflicts have already arisen. As such, there is a need for a proper and effective method of treating injuries. For the fruits of her labor, Avril develops her own healing magic, a form of magic that recreates the miracles of modern-day medicine. She immediately turns her attention toward Luciana, checking whether she is all right. Avril attempts to use her healing magic within a sterilized chamber, but the circumstances are far from ideal. The injury has been caused by the swing of a broadsword, and she needs to prepare Luciana for surgery immediately. Yet her surroundings are not properly sterilized, and that realization makes her hesitate as she examines the injury. An immediate pang strikes her heart. Something about this situation feels terribly wrong. Max also notices Luciana's condition and becomes concerned for her. Avril desperately urges Luciana to wake up, hoping that she can somehow respond. At that very moment, it becomes clear that Luciana has indeed been struck on the back by the Demon King's sword. However, Annie notices something strange. Luciana is fine. There is nothing life-threatening about her condition. There is not even a cut. The impact has merely blown Luciana away a considerable distance, yet she has emerged without so much as a scratch. Nothing about her condition appears abnormal. From what Annie can see, Luciana is completely fine. The assassin notices that the girl is still alive and finds it surprisingly amusing. Nevertheless, he intends to kill her once everyone else has been dealt with. Annie immediately reacts to his words with disbelief, unable to comprehend how he can speak so casually about human lives. Her magic begins to gather as the stars converge around her. She calls upon the stars to crush her enemy and unleashes Meteor Strike. This is her most powerful attack, a devastating magical strike imbued with silver attributes. The assassin considers it an excellent choice of attack, but he remains completely unfazed, regarding it as nothing more than an insignificant threat. Still, he acknowledges that Annie deserves praise for accomplishing so much. For mankind to retain knowledge of his weakness despite the passage of countless ages is, in his eyes, remarkably diligent, yet there is no one to tell him that the world has definitely forgotten all about that weakness. The reincarnation cheat has made sure of that. Even so, the assassin declares that it matters little what kind of magic they use. It matters little what silver weapon they wield. The conclusion remains the same: those who are weak are destined for death. Then, to his complete surprise, his sword breaks. At the exact spot where his sword meets Annie's magic, an unfamiliar power tears through it. The assassin cannot comprehend what he is witnessing. This level of magic should be impossible. It is silver magic belonging to an awakened saint. He desperately tries to determine when this power came into contact with him. Magic of such magnitude should have been immediately detectable, yet he had been so occupied with controlling this vessel that he neglected to monitor the condition of his sword. Christopher realizes that one of them must be the saint, although he has no idea what is happening. Regardless, he seizes the opportunity and moves forward, striking at the assassin. The assassin immediately recognizes the danger. If this continues, the sword through which he has projected his consciousness will eventually collapse. With that realization, everyone begins throwing their magic at the assassin as well. The situation becomes completely preposterous from his perspective. He has already diverted the majority of his magical energy into the sword, yet he is still unable to repel the power of the saint. The saint herself is nowhere to be sensed. That can only mean one thing. This magic is merely the residue of the saint's power. For even a remnant of her strength to wreak such havoc within his receptors, she must have cast the spell while carrying an immense devotion and oath within her heart. Subdued feelings. The assassin finds himself wondering what she could possibly be thinking about as she cast the spell. What kind of emotion could produce such overwhelming power? Meanwhile, Melody simply smiles. As a maid, she considers it only natural to protect her master. The assassin is left utterly bewildered, unable to understand what in the world is happening. Meanwhile, Melody quietly saves the teacup. Relieved that it has survived the chaos, Melody thinks that protecting her master is her duty. No harm shall ever befall the young miss while she is around. Meanwhile, the assassin cannot understand that this is precisely what he has lost. He continues to wonder when he could possibly have come into contact with the saint's power. There had been no problem in the forest, nor had anything unusual occurred during the process of obtaining the vessel. They had not encountered anything strange on their journey to the royal capital either. Neither the crown prince, the female magician, nor the saint which had left anything behind. Then, a sudden realization strikes him: impossible. The girl is wearing a protection spell with a holy silver defense status of 999.8. That moment, the Demon King remembers the primary reason he was defeated by the saint long ago. It was because of the protection of holy silver. It may be labeled as equipment, but it is more accurate to regard it as a specific buff. The equipment affected by the spell is not limited to something as simple as a dress. The Demon King suddenly becomes overwhelmed by the absurdity of the situation. Wait. No, wait. Hang on. That girl is not even the saint. Which means the saint is not even here. He has only just realized that the holy vestments have been worn by 3 separate individuals altogether. Now that is simply ridiculous. The Demon King then notices another problem and wonders where the rest of his sword has gone. His small ego becomes so irritated that he begins eliminating the dark substance scattered around him. Christopher notices the strange material and wonders what exactly it is. He recognizes it as miasma and explains that it is composed of dark magic. He immediately warns everyone not to breathe it in. Everyone is instructed to avoid inhaling the miasma, but they remain trapped within the barrier. They understand that the barrier must be destroyed as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Luciana's father can barely comprehend what is happening before him. His only concern is his daughter. He cries out desperately, demanding that his precious daughter be returned to him. He, too, is wearing the protection of holy silver. With a single strike, he manages to destroy the barrier. Pupil is astonished as he witnesses the incredible result. At the same time, the miasma begins to leak outward. It is leaving. Luciana's father immediately rushes toward his daughter. He reaches her and checks whether she is all right before pulling her into his arms. Relief washes over him when he realizes that she is safe. Christopher, however, turns his attention toward the assassin. He notices the sword of pure silver. This is bad. If this continues for much longer, the assassin's consciousness will disperse into the negative emotions scattered throughout the world. He needs to find a new, respectable vessel immediately. A human will not do. Their egos are far too strong. Insects and rats are unsuitable as well, since their bodies are simply too weak. An inorganic object is no better, as such objects would draw an innate power and become difficult to possess. The sword of silver belonging to the saint is not something that can be acquired easily. The Demon King therefore searches for another vessel. Eventually, he enters the body of a dog. For now, this special vessel will have to do. The Demon King notices something unexpected almost immediately. The dog is incredibly happy to still be alive. It seems genuinely overwhelmed by the simple miracle of continuing to exist. The Demon King finds the reaction strange. Such an enormous ego in such a small creature is difficult for him to comprehend. Yet, to his own surprise, he finds that he can relate to the joy of living to a certain degree. Perhaps the two of them are more suited to each other than he initially thought. The dog continues expressing its happiness, grateful simply to be alive and thankful for having survived. The demon reflects that he is the Demon King, the very personification of every negative emotion that exists in the world. Even so, he finds himself unable to comprehend the feelings of gratitude that his current vessel continues to express. He quickly dismisses the thought, as another matter captures his attention. A particular scent reaches his heightened senses, and he silently appreciates the extraordinary sense of smell that his canine form possesses. Thanks to it, he has managed to detect the scent of a certain individual. After sniffing the air more carefully, he realizes that there is no mistake. The scent undoubtedly belongs to the girl who had previously been mentioned. Since she should still be within the castle, he concludes that this is the ideal opportunity to uncover the truth behind the mysterious saint. As he surveys the mansion, he detects only a single human presence with a faint amount of magical energy inside the residence. Entering the mansion without hesitation, he follows the scent until he reaches a particular room. The fragrance is strongest there, leading him to conclude that it must be the girl's personal chamber. However, despite searching with his senses, he is unable to detect the saint's presence. He assumes that there may still be some clue hidden within the room. Before he can continue his investigation, he senses a powerless human approaching. Killing such a weak person would require almost no effort, yet he considers that the individual might possess useful information. As the woman arrives, Melody immediately accuses the dog of being responsible for the disorder in her lady's room. The Demon King decides that a small amount of brainwashing would easily force her to reveal everything she knows. However, just as he prepares to act, he suddenly pauses. He immediately recognizes the unmistakable power surrounding her. It is the magic of silver, the sacred magic belonging to the saint. Realizing this, he is shocked to discover that the very woman standing before him is the saint herself, now furiously demanding to know what he is doing there. He cannot understand what he is witnessing. He had believed that she possessed almost no magical power whatsoever. Earlier, he had not even detected enough magical energy from her to justify calling it magic. What the Demon King does not know is that Melody possesses exceptional mastery over concealing her magical abilities. She is capable of completely suppressing every trace of her magic until the precise moment she chooses to reveal it. Her concealment is so perfect that even the Demon King himself fails to detect her true power until that instant. Filled with anger, Melody declares that she has no intention of letting him escape. The scene then shifts to the royal chambers of Crown Prince Christopher. Exhausted from the recent events, Christopher admits that he is completely worn out before acknowledging the hard work that has been done. His attention then turns to Annie, and he wonders how she managed to appear there so unexpectedly. She explains that she entered through a secret passage. Hearing this, Christopher requests that she only use the passage when he is already inside the room. Annie readily agrees to his request. Christopher jokingly remarks that he simply needs enough time to hide away his rather questionable collection before anyone unexpectedly enters. He immediately denies possessing anything of the sort, insisting that there is absolutely nothing suspicious to conceal. Annie explains that she would also be perfectly willing to arrange a formal visit instead. However, she points out that if word were to spread that she had been visiting the Crown Prince's chambers so late in the evening, everyone would immediately assume that their marriage had already been decided. Christopher expresses sincere gratitude for her thoughtful consideration, feeling that he will forever remain indebted to her for being so careful about protecting both of their reputations. Setting that matter aside, Christopher asks about Luciana's condition and inquires about the doctor's diagnosis. Annie explains that, in the end, even the physician was unable to determine what was actually wrong with her. The entire situation remains incredibly strange, as there should be no possibility that someone could emerge completely unharmed after suffering an attack from the Demon King. Annie further reveals that she has already questioned Luciana's parents regarding the incident. Unfortunately, they remain deeply traumatized by everything that happened and are only able to answer that they know nothing. Their reaction is completely understandable, considering that they witnessed their own daughter being cut down before their very eyes. After considering all of the available information, Christopher concludes that the entire incident must somehow be connected to the saint. Annie remarks that they can at least confirm one important fact: Luciana is not the saint. Her magical power is far too limited, whereas the saint in the game entered the academy possessing exceptionally high magical power from the very beginning. At least, that is how the story originally unfolds in the game. Ever since they realized that they were living inside the world of the game, they have spent countless hours making preparations for the future events they expected to occur. However, when the first official event finally arrives, everything proceeds in complete opposition to the game's original plot. Even the appearance of the Demon King raises countless questions, and Annie admits that she has no idea what ultimately happened to him. She explains that the game concludes this particular event with the heroine awakening her extraordinary saintly powers, after which the story simply moves forward without providing any further explanation. Before changing the subject, Annie remembers another matter. The Rudelberg couple has requested permission for their maid to come to the castle and personally care for Luciana during her recovery. Christopher sees no issue with the request. However, he cannot help wondering why Luciana was not accompanied by a servant during the spring ball. Annie reminds him that, according to what they know, the Rudelberg household employs only a single maid. Even so, Luciana's appearance at the ball had been remarkably elegant. Her dress was beautifully prepared, and her naturally adorable and graceful appearance made her stand out even more. To make matters even more noticeable, she had been escorted by Max himself. Calling her eye-catching hardly does her justice. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she attracted more attention than anyone else present at the entire spring ball. Although Christopher agrees with that observation, Annie cannot ignore the strange inconsistencies surrounding Luciana. If she had truly shone so brilliantly during the spring ball, then she should have become one of the game's major characters as well. Yet Annie cannot remember such an adorable girl ever appearing in the game. She begins questioning Luciana's true identity. The name Luciana certainly sounds familiar, but she cannot remember where she has heard it before. Christopher expresses his sincere relief that Luciana survived the incident. Had she truly died during the Demon King's attack, it would have been an enormous tragedy not only for those around her but for the entire world. At that very moment, Annie suddenly realizes the truth. Luciana is none other than the fallen maiden. She cannot believe that it took her so long to recognize her. In the game, Luciana had looked so completely different that Annie never managed to connect the two versions of her. The girl before them has become so incredibly cute and beautiful that she bears little resemblance to the original character. Curious, Christopher asks what exactly Annie means by calling Luciana the Fallen Maiden. Annie explains that, in the original storyline, Luciana was meant to become one of the heroine's principal antagonists. Because her appearance at the spring ball differs so drastically from the game's version, Annie's memories had failed to associate the two together. According to the original story, Luciana eventually falls into despair and becomes possessed by the Demon King. After serving as his vessel, she fights against the heroine's party before ultimately being defeated. Depending on the circumstances, she is either slain by the heroine's companions or discarded and killed by the Demon King himself. That is the tragic fate originally written for the Fallen Maiden, Luciana. Annie then recalls an excerpt from the official companion book released alongside the game's Silver Saint and V. When Luciana's parents finally arrive at their villa in the royal capital, they embrace their daughter, who has already fallen into an utterly miserable condition. Luciana blames herself for driving away the previous maid through her own inadequacy. Despite advertising for a replacement, not a single person is willing to accept the position. She is forced to handle both the management of her family's territory and all of the Academy's admission procedures by herself, leaving her with no opportunity even to write a letter back to her parents. If overwhelming work had been her only burden, Luciana would have persevered through determination alone. What truly crushes her spirit is the relentless scorn, ridicule, and contempt directed at her by everyone around her. Gradually, these experiences cause her to develop an overwhelming inferiority complex regarding both herself and her circumstances. Although her parents continuously try to comfort and encourage her whenever possible, their love eventually fails to reach their broken daughter. The friends she once treasured slowly distance themselves from her one after another, leaving her completely isolated. Even the hopes she had placed upon attending the spring ball are ultimately shattered. As these disappointments continue to pile up, Luciana finds herself wondering why such dark emotions never stop accumulating inside her heart. She repeatedly questions the unfairness of her own life, asking why her fate is so painfully different from everyone else's. Christopher quietly realizes that these feelings are precisely what allow the Demon King to seize control of her heart and transform her into an enemy of the heroine. After everything she suffers, she is ultimately killed as well. He cannot help but think that such a fate is unimaginably cruel. Annie explains that none of these tragic events actually appear during the game itself. They exist only as supplementary material contained within the official companion book, which expands upon the characters' hidden backstories. Nevertheless, Luciana's tragedy serves an extremely important purpose. Through witnessing her suffering, the heroine finally comes to understand the true burden and responsibility that accompanies being the saint. Luciana becomes the first and only vessel of the Demon King whose story is filled with overwhelming guilt, sacrifice, and tragedy, making her one of the most essential characters in the entire narrative. Christopher cannot help asking why Annie remembers such an important character only now. She openly admits that she has no excuse. However, she insists that he must understand how drastically different Luciana appears in reality compared to her appearance in the game. There was simply no way she could have recognized her immediately based on her appearance alone. Christopher agrees that the explanation makes sense. However, another inconsistency still troubles him. The Fallen Maiden was never supposed to attend the spring ball in the original story. If that is true, can the Luciana they have come to know truly be the same person? The Luciana who exists in reality has experienced a fate completely different from the one depicted in the game. Wearing an elegant gown that earns her the nickname of the Fairy Princess, she attends the ball while being escorted by Max, an event that should never have happened according to the original storyline. During the third event of the ball, she even takes the missing heroine's place and somehow emerges completely unharmed. The more Annie thinks about it, the more it feels as though the entire script of the world has been rewritten specifically to favor Luciana. Unable to dismiss the possibility, Annie wonders whether Luciana might also be a reincarnator, just like they are. She asks Christopher whether he has reached the same conclusion. However, before he can answer, she realizes that he has quietly fallen asleep. Completely dumbfounded, Annie wonders how he could possibly drift off in the middle of such an important revelation.